Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Argonauts. Welcome, Speculate listeners. Welcome, everybody, to a special Speculate event, a joint Speculate event. As I just realized that for some reason I didn't do the title screen correctly because I forgot we switched that up last night. Darn it. What is wrong with me not doing that? I apologize in advance. What's going on, everyone? It is a great pleasure to welcome everybody, though, to our joint Twitch Speculate show. I'm going to go fix that problem, which I was supposed to have done already. This is what happens when you run too many shows. You run too many shows, and all of a sudden everything begins to blur together. It's my life in the time of the pandemic brain that's actually doing this. But it's a great pleasure to welcome everybody here. Welcome, Argonauts. Welcome, folks. And my great gratitude for everyone being here today. Before we go any further, just a couple of quick reminders here. First of all, for the Speculate listeners, I want to welcome everybody and hope you have enjoyed our actual play shows. This is another joint event happening with my Twitch channel, so I hope you have been enjoying these as we move and launch into a new one today, Star Wars Scum and Villainy, GM'd by my capable co-host Mike Underwood, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. And what you're about to hear is going to be me talking to my Twitch channel, because it is a great pleasure to welcome the folks from my Twitch channel as well, the Argonauts, and remind everybody about ways to support us here on the stream. If you haven't done so already, please consider following the channel. Please consider checking out the YouTube. Please consider checking out, which is !ArvTube, by the way. Discord is !ArvCord. Twitter is !ArvTweets. All of that can be found, of course, all of that can be found over on my website, arvanelleron.com. On the financial side, we have got the Patreon, !ArvTreon, the shop, the merchandise area, which is !ArvShop. And then we have also got the sub button, which is right above that video window, which lets you get those custom emotes and sub badges and things like that, plus publishing stuff. !Icarus for details about my graphic novels. Icarus and Jelinek coming in about a month or so, maybe a little bit less. Very, very pleased with the progress on that art. Library is Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library, my D&D 5e adventure and sourcebook, and which the printer is now open. Thankfully, the printer in Lithuania is out of lockdown, so they are now in the process of fulfilling orders, and so that means our print edition of that is going to be moving ahead, which is great. PDF, of course, is already available. And Grayshade KS, more details about my Grayshade Kickstarter, which will be beginning to lift as the lockdown moves as well. So that's what we've got going on also. And for the Speculate listeners, just another reminder to those and to my Twitch folks that we do have a Patreon as well, and our Speculate Patreon supports what we do here on this stream. And so any support that people can give us over there, along with which gets you exclusive content, incidentally, stuff that even my Twitch folks won't have because of this being a joint event, that is something which you can check out on our Patreon, and we will have links to that over here as well. So now that I've talked a little bit about that, it is time to introduce the players. And so I'm going to unmute myself, and again, apologize if I'm interrupting them shamefully without knowing it. And then I'm going to unmute them. And then last but certainly not least, I'm going to head over to the screen so you can see this gorgeous overlay with all of the gorgeous players, equally all gorgeous, the gorgeous players that are here, and of course the gorgeous GM. I need to get that in or I'm not going to survive the first session. It's my great pleasure to introduce all of them, and I will start by introducing Mike, and then Mike can take over from there while I, Mr. So-called pro streamer, go back and fix the title of the stream, which I completely forgot was not actually listed on my channel. So I'm just going to go fix that now with not at all egg on my face whilst Mike handles the rest. So Mike, over to you.
Hey everybody, this is Speculate in a joint stream with twitch.tv/ArvanElleron, aka Greg's Twitch channel. So thank you, Greg, for hosting us and for running the production back end. And we are going to be launching a new actual play mini-series on Speculate called Star Wars After Alderaan. We're playing Scum and Villainy, which is a forged in the dark role-playing game created by Strasha Simovic and John LaBeouf Little, a hack of Blades in the Dark by John Harper. Both of these are published by Evil Hat. The folks at Evil Hat do some really great stuff, so check them out. I've loved Star Wars since I can remember, so it's really fun to get back to this galaxy and to bring in some of my favorite storytellers and gamers to kind of make the Star Wars galaxy our own in telling this story. So this is mini series format. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this was have a session 0. And we'll talk a little bit more about what session 0 means. But first, I want to go down the row and I guess column in the Twitch stream. It's a row on my Zoom. There's some inside baseball for you who are listening or watching. And let our players give a short introduction of who they are, what they do, and then we'll dive back into the session 0 work. So Joyce, do you want to tell everybody watching and listening who you are?
Hi everyone, I'm Joyce, and I'm from Singapore, and I write science fiction and fantasy, young adult and middle grade, and yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. Marie.
Hello, I'm Marie Bilodeau. I'm located in Ottawa in Canada. I am an author and storyteller, sci-fi and fantasy, and I'm a professional storyteller as well. So I do shows for fun.
Awesome. DongWon.
Hi, I'm DongWon Song. I'm a literary agent here in New York City. I represent mostly science fiction, fantasy for young adult, middle grade. Also like a lifelong Star Wars fan, so super excited to be here.
Cool. And of course, Greg is one of our players as well. Twitch viewers know him well. But Greg, if you want to remind maybe new listeners what you're up to.
Sure. So welcome everyone. I, along with Mike, am the co-host of Speculate, and as they said, I host this Twitch channel, which does lots of different tabletop stuff. In so-called real life, I am a college professor and author of speculative fiction, and also apparently do some game writing, which I kind of stumbled into that I didn't expect originally, but I'm now doing. Also, I did want to mention, just before throwing it back to you, that now that I've got the thing fixed, because I totally had that fixed at the very beginning, and it wasn't at all something I just did, but I wanted to mention that this weekend, for those who may be coming in from the Speculate world to watch us live, is my annual charity convention, ArvCon. This year, it is being done to benefit the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation in honor of our longtime channel moderator, Kilobyte, who was a fellow Canadian with Marie, who passed away from complications of diabetes at the age of 39 a few weeks ago. That was a big shock to the community, especially because Scott, which is his real name, did 90% of my intro videos, and a lot of stuff that was on this channel were assets for him, and so that was a big shock to us. And although we are in the midst of a global pandemic, it does not mean that every other issue we deal with, whether it be crushing poverty or racial issues or disease, don't continue even in the pandemic. And so this weekend is going to be our annual convention, which is done to raise money for various causes. It will involve no less than 7 separate tabletop campaigns running over the course of the weekend. Esper Genesis, my space opera game, will be on Friday. On Saturday, we have Adventures in Middle-earth, which stars, and actually I should say, Esper Genesis starring DongWon's client, Carlos Hernandez. On Saturday, we have another one of DongWon's clients, Amal El-Montar, in my Adventures in Middle-earth campaign. D&D with GOG Storm King's Thunder, with a number of the GOG stream team members as a part of that. And then we'll have a concert with 3 people. Kilgore Trout, Chrono Wolf is the stage name of Matt Van Roon, who does some of the music for this channel as well. And then Indy, who's kind of a pop star, pop guy whose career is really starting to blow up. He's done this for us for a number of years. And then we will conclude that evening with a session of Community D&D, which features the game that used to be played. Echo Alpha X5, I see in chat, as one of the players for that. But that was Kilobyte's game that he played in on this channel, so it seemed appropriate to put them on Saturday night. Sunday will be a marathon session of D&D with Infinity and Beyond, Curse of Strahd, 8-hour session on that Sunday. And then Monday we will wrap up with a one-shot of City of Mist, GM'd by Johnny Pittman, Video Store Cowboy. And then Monday evening will be our usual session of Emberwind, which Marie participates in, and so she will be with the rest of the crew. John Helfers is the GM for that crew. So it's going to be a big, epic event. Our goal is $2,000. That's a lot in the time of a pandemic, but we've made money like that or more than that in the past, and I'm hoping the community will come together. We have giveaways and surprises and all that stuff. So thank you to the players for being patient, but I did want to get that out there since it's happening this weekend. And now that's me. Mike, back to you, and I'll be quiet.
Okay, so because we're doing a mini series, I wanted to put a little bit of the before game prep kind of on display and get it recorded for listeners here, because something that I've come to really appreciate in the past years in role-playing games is to not just show up to the first session of a new campaign. Okay, cool, everyone has their characters, and we're just going to start by jumping into scene. Instead, groups are increasingly, and some people have been doing this all along, but kind of it's become a more popularized and kind of coherent idea in terms of the session zero, where the players and GM meet together, having maybe talked about the game a little bit already, and in a group all together in the same room, or in pandemic times like this, especially all on one video call, we just talk through what we all want from the game, what we're bringing to the game in terms of our touchstones, maybe our interest as players in terms of here are mechanics I want to engage with, or here's a kind of story that I'm looking to tell as a player and or with the character that I've created. And sometimes you do a session zero starting from absolutely nothing, and everybody builds their characters like on the spot, and you build the troop that way. So there's a lot of different ways of doing a session zero. What we're doing now is not me saying, here is the one way to do it. This is just the way that we're going to find together. Some of the players have already done some backstory work for their characters. Some folks have already built out stats. So we're going to kind of get everybody up to a certain point, and along the way, we're going to talk about what we're looking for from the game. Another thing that I think is important to keep in discussion is the idea of safety tools. And this is basically pseudo-mechanical storytelling tools that we use together to stay safe in terms of like emotional engagement with the game. There's a lot of different safety tools. The one I would propose that we use is script change, or at least a version of script change based on the script change RPG toolbox by Bo Sheldon. And the idea with script change is that it uses familiar cinematic language. And so that would be if we're relaying or dramatizing a scene that touches on something that you don't want to engage with as a player right now, you can just hold your hand out to the camera like this, and we as the other players will see that you've done that, and we can pause the action. And sometimes what you'll want is just pause because you want to be able to do a check-in, or I'll pause before continuing a scene where I say, hey, pause, we're going to talk about like planetary genocide, a la the Death Star blowing up a planet. And that's a pretty heavy subject. In the movie, it is treated with emotional intensity for the characters, but the way that we engage with that may be different. And so when sensitive material comes up, and some of this material is sensitive in ways that are unexpected, and sometimes it can be unexpected even to ourselves, pause is probably the default one where we say, hey, I want to pause for a second, check to make sure that everybody is feeling okay, or just to flag content as it emerges. And that way it gives people the chance to say, hey, I would really like to do this kind of in fast forward, where we can have it, but let's not do too much detail, or let's not dwell on the scene. Or someone might say, hey, can we rewind really quick, because I don't like where this went. Like, I feel like I stepped out of character, or that the story's kind of gone awry in a way that where it would make sense for us to reevaluate and maybe move the camera, like move the reel back a little bit and end up going somewhere else. And another option would be to basically skip scene, and that is like basically pulling the curtain close. And like, oh, okay, well, these two characters they're gonna sleep together, but let's just skip to the morning after, because we're not going to dramatize that type of scene in this game. And these are tools for us all to communicate what we're comfortable with and what we want out of a game. For everybody who is listening or watching, it's much harder to have safety tools in a way that allows us to basically serve everybody's interest in a way where we move the game. If you're listening after the fact, we can't understand, we don't know what your what your lines and veils are, what things are hard for you. So this is express permission if you're listening or watching, where if there is material that you're not comfortable with, we were happy to have you. It's totally fine to step away or to pause and come back later. I do not expect there to be a lot of material that is really especially sensitive for people, because I'm kind of shooting for like a PG-13 style Star Wars adventure in a similar tonal range to something that we'd see in the Star Wars films, or maybe in shows like The Mandalorian or Clone Wars or Rebels. But that's my short spiel on safety tools. Greg.
Yeah, just quickly, because we just... I'm just explaining for the Speculate folks who are wondering why the heck we keep hearing the Final Fantasy VII victory music. So on my channel, you get that victory music when we get people who sub, and we just had 6 gift subs from Classicor and Kerflop combined. So thank you for doing that. I probably will set up the separate Zoom recording now, just so that the poor Speculate folks aren't like, what the devil is this in my Star Wars? So I apologize for getting the peanut butter and chocolate combo together in a way I hadn't intended. So just give me a second. Recorded this.
Hey, Mike, just while we're paused for a second, I want to say thank you for going through all those safety tools.
Yes.
I know it's been a big issue in the sort of actual play community recently, so I'm really glad people are doing that and, actually putting those safety tools out there and having that conversation. So as you can see, my X card is right there, always ready for me to grab.
Thank you.
Indicator of how many games I play these days.
Yeah, I followed some of probably the incident that you're referring to. And so I wanted to be really sure to hit this on stream and in the recording.
Okay, and we're good to go. So recording is going just fine. And just thank you very much, Classicor and Kerflop, for those subs. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, and enjoy all the emotes and all that good stuff. Yeah, but now we should be okay for the rest of the Speculate folks.
Sure. I wanted to pause real quick and check in with everybody. Does anyone have any questions about pause, rewind, and fast forward kind of as the primary safety tools under the script change format, or anything else about safety for this game series?
I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm okay.
Yeah,
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. DongWon mentioned that he has an X card. That's another safety tool. For me, the X card overlaps a lot with the pause type button. For everybody, if you do want to, use pause or rewind or fast forward, again, just like cover up the camera, or if you prefer, you can you just type into our Zoom chat, put up the X shape like Joyce just did on the screen, or type into the Twitch chat. Zoom chat is probably better. I know in these kinds of situations, sometimes one response is a lot easier than another, just because of how we process emotions. So I'm going to try to pay attention to everything. And if you notice another player sending a message like that, and it seems like I haven't found it, please amplify it, because these are really important for us to use. So with that established, I want to kind of lay out the basic premise that I had proposed for the series, and then we can talk about it a little bit, and then I want to go into mechanics and stat out the characters, and then in this process, I think we're going to organically move between mechanics and premise in terms of building our intended shape of what this game is going to be. So the idea that I had here was for the camera to start with and focus on a surviving member of the Alderaanian royal family after the destruction of Alderaan during the events of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, aka the first Star Wars movie. Because we have Princess Leia, and we see her experience when Alderaan is destroyed, but Alderaan it's not very present throughout a lot of the rest of the original series. Like it becomes backstory, and Leia remains a princess, but we don't really see her engaging with other people from Alderaan in the films. The expanded material does deal with this, and then we see Alderaanian characters pop up here and there elsewhere in the lore. But I thought it'd be really interesting to to play that kind of immediate aftermath kind of story. And the other big touchstone for me on this was the Mandalorian TV series, where the Mandalorian tells a fun Star Wars story without it needing to be, one, about the Skywalkers, two, about kind of the galactic level conflict. Three, it's really much more like a found family, living on the edge kind of experience. And that kind of scoundrelly vibe is something that I think a lot of people connect with in the Star Wars universe. And it's one that really fits well with Scum and Villainy as a game, where its basic continuity, like their world is a kind of somewhat Star Warsy, kind of scoundrelly Outer Rim equivalent. So I think it's relatively easy for me to go, cool. So we're going to use Scum and Villainy, and we're going to be on the Outer Rim. And then that way it's easier to constrain, so that we're not dealing with thousands of planets. We're maybe dealing with a couple of dozen planets.
It also means we get to hang out, by the way, in The Mandalorian, which is the baddest ass thing Star Wars has produced in years, in my opinion. So I am just like, I'm all about. When Mike first started talking about this, he's like, I was like, can we play the Mandalorian, please? He's like, yes, Greg, we can play. So
yeah,
anyway,
and like I've been trying to really lean into like, yeah, let's absolutely do this thing that we're excited about, because we don't report to anybody. Like, we are here for our own fun, and with the hope that us having fun the way that we want to is going to be enjoyable for other people.
Yeah.
So I'll pause here and open the floor to anybody else in terms of like what parts of or types of interest in Star Wars you're especially interested in exploring with this game.
I think The Mandalorian's a great touchstone. The other one I've been thinking about a lot is Rogue One. I mean, sort of these things that kind of touch on side parts of the Star Wars universe, stuff that isn't sort of mainline Skywalker family drama, and, really hitting different locations in the Star Wars universe than we've seen before, so sort of outer rim planets, or even sort of more central planets that haven't really been on screen before. So.
I love the idea, if you go, like, if we look at The Mandalorian and even Rogue One as well, like, I love the idea of how found family is so important in the Star Wars universe as well. So I love that vibe that is, I assume, infiltrate into the game as well. So that's always part of my favorite part of character development in the Star Wars universe.
I like the idea of found family as well. So it's like my touchstone is actually the original series, the so-called the sequels, not prequels. I can. Yeah, I like the idea of people finding each other and being friends and close friends for a long time. So to base the story on. Is the internet going off? Oh my god. My internet is dying.
You roboted a bit, but it's okay.
No. Oh god, StarHub, don't die on me. Sorry. My internet provider is unstable at the moment. Oh no. Okay, that's all. Okay, found family, yeah. That's my favorite. And the fact that redemption, finding ourselves during a long journey, that's my shtick too. I like that too. It's like it's like finding yourself. It's just not the destination, is how you go through it. The journey that matters. Like the destination is just like this, but it's how you go through it that's very important. So I'm a sucker for those kind of stories.
I'm also, I think, interested in stories that have less like moral, like certainty. I think, like the mainline Star Wars universe again is like very like light and dark, and these guys are good and these guys are bad, right? There's not a lot of interrogation of like ways in which the rebellion is a complicated organization that doesn't do great stuff, right? So.
Yeah, I agree. I love the shades of gray are a nice place to be.
Yeah, and I think this time period, I'm thinking kind of immediately after the destruction of Alderaan, and that like there's a dial I see that could be like literally minutes or hours through like a few weeks after You know, there's a big chunk of time. There's like 3 years between episodes 4 and 5, and that time period is really fruitful, I think, for storytelling, because we see this swing back and forth in terms of the rebellion is ascendant because they've had this big victory, but then the empire is like scaling up and cracking down, and there's going to be a lot of people caught in the middle, or people who are left out or trying to stay out of all of this fighting.
So for context, how far are we from the Battle of Yavin at this point?
Yeah, that's something I wanted to kind of pose to you all as the players in terms of how immediate do you want it to be? And in this, because Marie is planning on playing the Alderaanian character, I want to like frame this a little bit informed by which version is interesting to you in terms of if you're going to be playing this character who is most directly tied to this catastrophe, what about that is most interesting to you in terms of what your character would be doing to react?
I mean, it's a little bit, it depends really where we want to be timeline wise, and I look forward to hearing the others' ideas as well. But part of me is very interested, and that depends again on people's comfort levels with the immediate impact of that, because there's something very raw with dealing with something in the moment, but there's also power with, even if you like fast forward to like a couple of days or weeks after the event, where you still have the moment of like you're finding yourself a bit like we are in a world right now where it's a world that you're not too familiar with and you don't know where your footing is or where you're heading as well. One of the things that I had written into my character bio, or I was thinking about, was that she was listening to something from Alderaan, which is something very specific to her character, when it cuts off, and she doesn't yet realize that this is the last thing she'll ever hear from her planet. So there was a time lag in the character development to this happened and she died. So for me, there's a whole scope of time there that could be very interesting character wise. So I'm very open to where we want to go and where we want to play with it.
So Marie, does she know then by this point that Alderaan is gone? Does she know that or no?
The way I had it is her and I assume we're giving character details here. Are we?
Sure. I think filling in like to continue this conversation so that folks who are following along can understand.
So they know what's going on. So the way I had it is her daughter, who's a 20-year-old musician of some renown, like is growing into her power as a musician, if you will, on Alderaan, is streaming a live concert, like a musical concert, and she's on her way back home, and she's listening as a supportive parent. Her husband has died a long time ago, so she's the only parent, and she's listening in, and the feed cuts off partway through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then she doesn't know, she can't reach anyone, but things happen. I mean, communications go down. There are blockades that happened. The Empire is around and they are aware of it. And so as she heads home, she doesn't know yet that that's the last thing she'll ever hear from her family, that final note captive. So that
still doesn't know as the game begins.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think that connects to the question of, to what degree is this are this group of 4 people already established as some kind of unit? Because that could be, I could easily see a version where we have, Greg was thinking about playing like a security type character. DongWon is looking at like a mystic advisor type character, and Joyce was thinking about like some kind of mercenary type. So that we could have this crew already be established when news of Alderaan breaks, or we could start a little bit later and that this group cohered around someone's kind of agency in terms of like, I want to try to find and collect Alderaanian refugees, or like this event has turned me against the Empire, or this event has inspired me to want to like move to the Outer Rim and get away from all of this. So I think the timeline probably also informs and is dependent on the group. So if we want all 4 characters to already know each other, so that we're dealing with a found family that has already started to cohere, that either we need to backfill in terms of, oh, here's how everybody already knew each other, or maybe we have a little bit of time and distance that we've seen from Alderaan.
I think my character in particular, I'm playing sort of a droid assistant to the Alderaanian noble here. So I think it makes a lot of sense that we would have, at least the two of us would have been working together for a very long time. And I've been thinking of this droid as a family heirloom sort of kind of situation.
Right.
And I think that maybe the Alderaanian noble woman kind of found me as, my character as a scoundrel with a just good Corvette to go running away from the Imperials. So it's like, hi, I'm here, hire me. So but it's quite, I say it's synchronistic meeting that hey, I happen to have a ship. You can come and, as long as you pay me.
Right. And that raises the question of, like, did one of the characters already know Joyce's character from an earlier part of their life, or some other type of connection? So is that, like, Greg, is Joyce's character somebody that you had worked with or knew earlier doing like mercenary work, or are they somebody that the noble already knew because of some reason, like maybe there were like things that Alderaanian nobles wanted to do without the Empire knowing about it, or there's any number of ways of having character connections. And before we start the first session, I'd love to have at least some clarity on a short description of what the relationship between each of any two characters is, so that we're not starting session one with like, I don't know you yet, and we have to figure out how we relate to each other. I've found more interesting dramatic action when there's at least a starting beat to every character relationship, and then we build on that.
Well, maybe we should run through who the characters are at this point, and then that'll help us sort of fill out some of those.
I agree. Makes sense.
Thing. So,
Scum really doesn't have like a belief system, right? Never mind.
Yeah, it does. Scum Villainy doesn't have beliefs. It's something that I'm tempted to steal the beliefs framework from Austin Ramsay's Beam Saber, which is a little bit like links in Sprawl or strings in Monster Hearts. In a lot of indie RPGs, there's this like, here is a mechanical representation of your relationship with other characters, which I think can be pretty cool. Scum Villainy does have the Gambit system, which is like a crew scale resource that represents your ability to work together. But I'm certainly not opposed to the idea of trying to like hack in beliefs. And the idea here would be that when you assist other characters, the stronger your connection to them is, the more stressful it is to help them, but the greater the impact that they get, the greater benefit they get. And then as your beliefs about somebody increase, you get to a point where then you build a scene around testing one of those beliefs. And then you get extra XP and it resets.
Kind of like Hearts of Wulin, where you have the bonds and everything. And
there's kind of a whole design tradition around that, and we can codify that or not. Moving on. So as a quick character overview, we can quickly look at mechanics. So Greg, we worked on your character just a couple days ago, and you were looking at playing the muscle character, or the muscle playbook. So you want to tell us a little bit more about your character?
Sure. And I'm actually debating whether or not I'm going to reveal this on stream to the folks. So maybe I will temporarily turn off the center picture so that I can look at my character sheet. So my character, whose name is Raul Vardis, is originally is Mandalorian, although originally is not anymore. He's and I think this stuff is stuff that would be fairly known up front, although he doesn't talk about it, why he got disconnected from the Mandalorians as such. And that'll be part of the things that we'll discuss. But I have been security for Marie's character because I am part of a clan, Clan Grey Fox, which is essentially as Mike and I were talking about it together, a kind of a family business, a turnkey business, a hire an army business. If you need, and we have multiple services. If you need security services, if you need infiltration, if you need, just a few heavies to show up with armor and guns at the right times, then that's what they'll do. But the thing about Raw, which is important to keep in mind, is and I will put a link. I was looking before for possible pictures, so I'll put something in chat to kind of take a look at this. Okay, so I put that link there, and I'll put a link in the Zoom chat as well, not just the Twitch chat. This is a character who, and the only thing that's different from that is that's probably not the helmet. I don't actually use a direct Mandalorian helmet, nor do I always have to keep it on. He is in his early 40s, sort of silver gray hair, and got the full beard goatee effect. This is not a representation of me, as I am in my late 40s, so it's completely different, not at all like me in the least. But he is a character with a fairly deep religious engagement and interest, and in fact finds, for various reasons, DongWon's character to be fascinating, although I don't really know what to make of the character really. But I keep trying to find out more information from them about sort of, let me check out all the details about how do you do what you do, and what are you exactly, and that sort of thing. So I mostly because I've been in search of sort of a new kind of religious home-ish, I guess one might say. But I have a sort of deep moral connection that is in particular relating to the idea that there are lines that neither I nor my clan won't cross. So one of the reasons that I like security is the fact that I believe in Marie's character and being a generally good person and willing to defend her and the rest of the crew. And I won't do any more things that will compromise those moral conditions and beliefs. And I've never been asked to, so that's fine. But if I was told, to protect me, go, kill those 3 potential terrorists that happen to be children, my reaction would be no. And so that kind of thing sort of underpins a lot of what my character is about. The other thing I want to mention about the physical style of this character is that I'm not a big fan of the guns. So I have a vibroblade, which is called Reaver, which is something that I developed over the course of a long period of time. I have great quality and skill in melee fighting. That's sort of what I focused all my attention on in my training and development. And there are 4 notches in this otherwise pristine blade. It's not clear as to what those notches are, but that can maybe come up during the course of play. But there are 4 notches in the blade. And the only other weapon that I generally carry with me is a crossbow, a hand sonic crossbow known as Passage, which also has a total of 4 bolts in it. I essentially never use this except in extreme circumstances and cases. So it's always about the vibroblade and, hand-to-hand type of stuff. And I guess the only other thing I need to mention is that I usually wear kind of an amalgam, sort of a hybrid version of Mandalorian armor, so that I don't usually wear the full-out, if you think about the Mandalorian series, when he gets actually gets the full-out kit and gets all of the greaves and all that, I usually don't wear that unless stuff has really hit the fan, and then I will straight up, I will suit up if I need to do that. But most of the time, I like to be a little bit more agile, and so I will usually have sort of the torso and the arms partially covered, not the legs. And as I say, the helmet I don't, wear most of the time, just in certain circumstances when the time has come to really, kick butt and take names. That's when the helmet goes on. So,
Right.
yeah. So that's what
And
I'd
Greg,
say about him.
when we talked, you kind of brought up the kind of wandering, masterless warrior, samurai knight.
Yeah, very much
type
Seven Samurai-ish.
kind of
Yep.
archetype.
Mhm.
Because I think Star Wars puts on great display that cultural interchange between westerns and samurai storytelling.
Yes.
And so if we're pulling on that a little bit here, that's another kind of touchstone / intersection of like Star Warsiness.
Yep, he's very, very much Seven Samurai, and sort of the nomadic. He really is kind of a person in between a bunch of spaces. He and sort of groups. And I love the idea of the found family thing, because I think that very much fits here. This is his crew, so his tendency will probably be to be rather gruff with his crew, especially if they're doing something that's likely to get them killed. And he is very much the kind of character that will be, get the hell out of here, and then will go and engage like 30 people on his own if that's what he needs to do to save the rest of them. I'm not planning to be dumb, but if it's a choice between that and the crew gets taken out, then I will get taken out first, is the way I look at it.
So Joyce, do you want to kind of talk us through what you've thought about for your character so far, and how you're thinking about how they relate to everybody else?
My character is Jet, Jet, Jet Wu, and they present as a non-binary, ambiguous figure, like how I look like now, but probably not more handsome. Wears a slim jacket, but sometimes a bomber jacket, depending on their mood. That hikes a worn uniform that it's vaguely imperial, but not really imperial. Makes me wonder. People wonder if Jet is like a what do you call a soldier who defects from they have defected from somewhere before. Now it's just pretending to be a scoundrel and doing quite well. And goes by the outlaw name of Fireball, because apparently they think that all their project goes up in flames, because it's like, no, wait, stop that. And how they meet the noble is that when she was fleeing Alderaan, Jet happened to be there with a Corvette, and Jet only says, "You just have to pay me, I can get you through everything and anything." And I think Gregory's character will be like, "I don't like this character. I don't like this Jet, because Jet is like a bit Jet is trying to find their way through the during the bigger conflict, and trying to reconcile their failures in life. That's why I call it Fireball, because it's everything they do is goes up in flames and blah blah blah. But the name Fireball is cool. So, and the only thing that Jet suffers from is gambling. And I feel that Gregory's character will be often like pulling Jet away from possible dangers, like, stop going to that stupid gambling den now. So yeah, that's Jet.
And you were looking at the Scoundrel playbook?
Yeah, Scoundrel playbook. Okay. Yeah.
So if we fill that in, the Roll20 sheet should automatically populate some stuff.
Yeah.
So Greg and I made Greg's character together, and Joyce, if it's okay, we can kind of walk through character creation for you, and then Marie and DongWon, you can kind of use this as the framework, and then we'll make sure to check in with everybody to make sure we're all good character sheet wise. So Joyce, for being a scoundrel, you get 2 in sway and 1 in skulk as baseline.
Okay.
So sway is kind of the fast talk persuasion skill.
Yep, sway. Okay.
So theoretically, if say Han Solo were a scoundrel, he would have 2 in sway. The actual Han Solo in Star Wars does not appear to have sway that high, or just rolls very poorly because we're all fine. How are you?
Okay.
Hey, Mike, before we go on, is there a just a neutral sheet that you can put up that I can that you could add that I can show to folks while you're doing this? Because I don't want to reveal Joyce's character to everybody unless she wants to reveal the character. But
skunk. Oh.
Yeah, on his loaded dice that perpetually roll ones. Exactly. Or no, yeah, pretty much.
So
what I did.
Yeah, I know we have the ship, but the other one.
We're gonna have our amazing 5th character, Ample Karakatar.
Outstanding.
The iconic Star Wars character.
Yeah. Are we sure we can get away with that? Is that okay with Disney and everything?
So that should be editable and viewable from by everybody.
Lovely. Thank you.
You'll want to click to the character sheet tab, and then basically playbook. You have to fill in. So if this character we're going to say be a mechanic, then this automatically gets populated. So the stuff on the kind of farther along toward the right. So y'all can follow along there. So Joyce, for your character, you have the 2 in sway and 1 in skulk for free, and then you get 4 total other points. These action ratings can't be higher than 2 to start. So everybody should be able to see that there's 3 kind of chevrons per action, and the first one is to the left of a line, and the other 2 are to the right. This thing to the left is about attributes which are used for resistance, and I'll cover that a little bit later. 1 in an action is pretty good, and 2 is amazing. It's a fairly low dice pool game, and because of the type of game it is, if your character, say, doesn't have any points in helm, that doesn't mean that they can't pilot a ship. What it does mean is that it is more likely for them to need to spend stress and or get help in order to succeed at flying a ship. So that means, I'm not playing a hotshot pilot character. I'm playing somebody who can fly, but like the shots of them flying is really going to be them pushing themselves, and or them saying like, like flip the shields, and like they really need to work together with somebody, because this is definitely a game about teamwork.
I think like mine looks okay now. I have 1 point in helm, because since this is my Corvette, therefore I pilot it, and this is my Corvette, I can pilot it.
And generally you want to have the game asks you to basically put 1 attribute point somewhere that is a representation of your heritage, kind of who your people are, what your early life was like, and then 1 point that represents your background, which is kind of like what your first vocation or your first career was before you became a scoundrel. So, if a character was military, then maybe that shows up as scrap, or it shows up as doctor if they were a medic, or it shows up as study if they did like military intelligence.
Scrap, okay. Heritage is spacer. Okay.
So right now, Joyce, it looks like you've got 1 in helm, 1 in scrap, 1 in skulk, and 2 in sway.
Yep.
That means you'll have 2 left. Generally, in order to do resistances, which is basically when I inflict a consequence and I say, okay, here's a consequence that happens because of a failure or a mixed success die roll.
Okay.
Scoundrel characters, they are exceptional in some ways, and one of the ways that is that they can resist consequences. Where
Okay.
if I declare a consequence like, okay, well, Joyce, Fireball is gonna, like, you kind of took shots at some stormtroopers, but you only got a 4. And so the consequence is going to be that you're going to take a blaster bolt that is going to hit your shoulder. You as a player could say, I'm going to resist that. And then I would go, okay, well, that's physical consequence, so that you're going to roll prowess to resist. And then you would get dice to make that resistance pool based on how many different actions in the prowess section you had at 1 or more. So I see Fireball has Helm, Scrap, and Skulk. So that's 3, which means you get to roll 3 dice to resist the consequence. And I'll go over the exact details on that a little bit later to defer a little bit more of the rule stuff. So Doctor, Study, Helm, Scrap, Skulk, and Sway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that would be your 7 points in action.
Yep.
And everything that's in this equipment section, so load, and then you have kind of class specific, playbook specific load at the top, and then general stuff at the bottom. The inventory / equipment system in Scum and Villainy is very kind of as you need it, so you don't have to tick anything just yet. When you all start a mission, one of the things that you'll do is declare load, which is basically, oh, I'm going to have light load where I look very much like a civilian. I don't look like I'm loaded for bear at all. A normal load is like, okay, maybe you're somebody on the job, maybe a scoundrel, maybe somebody who's like, doing something military, or just somebody kind of with a fairly full kit. Heavy load, you look pretty obviously like somebody who is going to get into a fight and or trouble. So like the Mandalorian is basically always in normal to heavy load, because that full armored kit invites trouble, because you're basically walking into a fight with powered armor, or you're walking into a bar with powered armor. So if characters go into a mission with heavy load, I'm gonna use that against you, because your characters are going to be more obtrusive. You're going to be more obviously up to something. But for just now, you don't have to declare any of those things. So we've got action, we've got kind of background, heritage, background, and your vice for Fireball is gambling. Every scoundrel character gets the serendipitous starting ability. So you can tick that there, and then you'll get to choose one other special ability. And so for Marie and Dongwon, in each of your playbooks, Marie, you should fill in Speaker if you haven't already, unless you wanted to change your mind. And then Dongwon, I think you were going with Mystic, right? Okay. So all 4 characters will get the starting ability for their playbook, and then you get to choose one other one. So Joyce, which one are you going to go with for Fireball?
I'll go for Devil's Own Luck.
Okay, and can you read out what Devil's Own Luck does, and then tell us what Serendipitous does?
Okay, Serendipitous is your crew starts with +1 gambit when the pool resets, and Devil's Own Luck is you may expand your special armor to resist the consequences of blaster fire, or to push yourself when talking your way out of or running from trouble.
Which is an incredibly Star Wars ability.
Yeah.
I love that it is both talking your way out of or running from trouble. The designers wear their influences on their sleeve pretty well here, which is part of why it was a great pick for me to play Star Wars.
Can I add one more?
So to start, everybody gets the starting ability and one special ability.
Okay.
These are things that you can get more of with experience. And we'll be playing long enough that everybody should be able to get at least an advance or 2.
Okay.
You can also add to your action ratings. So when we get to experience, I'll talk about how that can be divided up in different areas. So for a mini series, I think if anybody wants to kind of select a trauma for your character to say, you know, they've been through some things in life and I want to really highlight this aspect of their character to role play, that's fine. Generally, characters start with 0 trauma, because if you get to 4 trauma, your character has to retire from the life of a scoundrel. We're doing a mini series. Getting to 4 trauma is incredibly unlikely. And so if somebody wants to take a trauma and say, I really want to put my marker down on this being an important trait that I'm going to role play for this character. Role playing kind of challenges that emerge from your trauma or your vice does get you extra XP. So if someone does want to select a trauma, that's fine. You don't have to. You can role play with trauma without necessarily having to mark it. It just won't kind of factor into XP as much. So basically you're saying, I'm going to start closer to having to crash out as a character in order to indicate that this is important to me to role play. And that's really up to each of you individually. So Joyce, do you have any questions about character creation stuff we've covered so far?
I'm good.
Okay, then I'll pull back and check in. DongWon and Marie, how are you doing on character creation stuff, and do you have questions?
Nope, I'm pretty much all set. We get 4 extra points for abilities for action rolls?
Correct.
Okay, yep, I am good.
I think I've got it too. Maybe just a like sanity check at some point before we actually play wouldn't be a bad thing, but
yeah. If it's all right, I'll just kind of walk through everybody's character sheet, and we'll introduce the special abilities real quick, and then once we've covered all 4 characters, we can kind of come back to some premise level stuff and talk a little bit more about the character relationships. So for your character, Marie, do you want to kind of walk us through just a little bit more detail about your character, kind of who she is and what you've got written down under these different areas?
Sure. So my character's name is Narana Mare. She is an Alderaanian noble who grew up with Breha Organa, who was the last queen of Alderaan. So she was friends with her, and once royal duties claimed her best friend, she kind of tried to be as supportive as she could be. Narana is very, she's kind. She's not, she believes that there's goodness in everyone, but she believes that choices affect how we reflect onto the world. So people who decide to side with the Empire are not good, but scoundrels and mercenaries and people who are doing what they have to do to survive are not bad, if you will. So, and that will have grown out of her discussions with DongWon's character as well, like their relationship there and what they enjoy. Like she enjoys reflecting on other people's thoughts. So she became a diplomat basically for Alderaan and a minister. Her last role was the Minister of Arts and Legacy, which is an innocuous title, but it allowed her access to a lot of different planets, a lot of different areas. She could travel unimpeded and unquestioned and gather data and information on the Empire's movements to bring back to the rebellion, since Alderaan was very tied with the rebellion at that point. So she she could infiltrate areas just by her title and her presence, and then bring the information back as necessary. She was married to a rebel commander who perished in battle a long time ago, and she had a daughter who unfortunately passed away with Alderaan's destruction. So she is haunted. I have decided that is a trauma that she will have. She is haunted by that.
I think that's fair.
Right?
That seems like it respects the fiction.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
that final note stopped, never to finish in space. I mean, yeah, it's haunting.
Wow.
So she is kind, but she's very determined as well to make a difference. So she will move forward as needed to do what needs to be done to save Alderaan's legacy, its art, and make it still stand, not be forgotten now that it's, most of its sacred texts are destroyed. So I selected the speaker role because that seemed like it would work for a noble.
Yeah, absolutely. So the speaker is a respectable person on the take. So because like these are all still scoundrels. And so I see you have 1 in study, and then heavy duty resolve, 2 in command, 2 in consort, 2 in sway.
Does that make sense?
I think it does make sense. It means that what I interpret that as a GM is it's you as a player really putting your marker down on I want to do a lot of the face roll, because your character is very versatile at being able to approach social situations through these 3 different methods: command, consort, and sway. If you wanted to be a little bit more versatile, I think it would be, you could still be a good social character if one or another of those points in command or sway did end up somewhere else. Because I think, I know Joyce's character has a good amount in sway as well. So I think this is fine as is. One thing I do want to check, like when we've seen all 4 characters, is do we have at least somebody who has a point or more in each of these action ratings? Because that gives you as a group the versatility to be able to approach challenges using the full set of actions.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm happy. What I can do is keep them there. And then once we start moving things around, because I like the idea of being able to support. And I don't want to assume, because I'm taking the speaker role and because I'm the noble, I don't want to assume that, like I want to see where other players' interests are with being the face, if you will, or like I don't want to take for granted that this is where my character should place herself. It just seemed logical at the time.
Sure.
But I am very open.
Okay. And then do you want to share your starting ability and the special ability that you selected?
So my starting ability is, I selected, it suggested it for me, so I just went with it, is Air of Respectability. So you get an extra downtime activity to acquire assets or lay low.
Right, and what that means is, so in Scum and Villainy, we have missions and then downtime. And during downtime, you can recover stress, you can acquire assets, which is, oh, okay, well, we're on an ice planet and we need like kind of thermal suits. So you might make an acquire asset roll to get, a rental or thermal suits that will last 1 mission. Usually acquire asset is, here is a thing we need for a mission and we only get to use it for 1 mission. And what that does is it lets the players not necessarily have to just accumulate loot in the same way that you might have to in another game. You go, okay, cool, we're doing this specific thing, we need to acquire assets for that. Cool, I'm going to go do that. A noble character who with the speaker role, you just are more able to do that. You are able to kind of expedite parts of that because you're used to operating that space. And then lay low is the kind of reducing heat and wanted action, which in this could be expressed by Noirana having connections to the rebellion, who are already used to like kind of smoothing out people's data trails or things like that. And then with any of these, we talk about, okay, well, how are you doing this thing? Which approach are you using? Because you could reduce heat by like falsifying records using hack, or you could do it by like using sway and like convincing somebody to drop an investigation, or you could do it with scrap and just beat up some of the people who are looking for you. There's a lot of different ways
find
to
you if they're
address
beaten
these.
up, right? I mean, like
right.
It's a simple solution to a difficult problem.
Yeah, or like Greg's character could use command, but what that actually looks like is he just wipes the floor with people, and then the scene that we see is 4 stormtroopers laid out on the ground, and Greg's character saying, we were never here. Yeah. Come back if you want to die.
I wanted to say very quickly that when we were putting this together, Mike at one point mentioned something about we were trying to figure out the difference between command and sway. And one of the things he talked about was like sway is like, convincing people, working with them, persuading them. Command is establishing realities, which is just like, here's the reality. I'm going to go into this bar, then there will be none of you left. This is the reality of what happened. It was one of the most fun experiences of like, this is the difference between persuasion and now the four of you are on the ground and this is how this plays. So
yeah, because with all of these actions, there's some overlap because they're like basically approaches to addressing situations. So in the book, it'll say like, consort will let you do this and this and this. You might X, but this other action might be better. And that's going to be about position and effect. So we'll talk through these whenever someone is trying to do something. It's very kind of dialectical, the process for building dice pools and rolling and resolving actions. And then Marie, could you also read us the special ability that you took?
Well, the special ability that I took, and this is another, I don't know if that's a problem, it's another downtime one, favors owed. So during downtime, you get +1d when you acquire assets or lay low. Anytime you gather info, take +1d. So it seems to be kind of linked.
Yeah, and a lot of these abilities actually have two abilities. So these are separate clauses. Anytime you gather info, take +1d. That can be whenever. Sometimes you can gather information during a mission. More frequently, you'll do it during downtime or free play. But what that communicates to me is that Noirana will especially shine in certain ways when we're like in between missions, trying to like figure out what to do next or how to get what we need to, or finding ways to kind of get the Empire or like criminal syndicates off of the group's back. And if you're excited about being able to contribute to the group in that way, those abilities definitely make sense.
It seems like she's really handling logistics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her main thing is going to be keep my people safe. You know, don't put them in, like, well, that would be unnecessary danger. Or you know, don't put them into unnecessary danger or something. But the way that she can contribute to is using her training as a minister and as a diplomat of just like, I need to get what happens and
and
make sure everyone has that.
Being connected in that way definitely makes sense. You know, another ability, like, so the old friends ability under speaker is absolutely the Lando system. No, Lando's a man. Old friend says, whenever you land in a new location, write down a friend you know there. See influential friends below.
Oh, that's fun.
And other versions of this ability in different games basically explicitly say, like, you know somebody. Do they like you or not? So you could like have a contact somewhere, but when you show up, they say like, you know, they start cursing at you, but you know them. So you have some kind of connection.
Being Saber explicitly makes you roll an action roll to find out what your last contact with that person was. Yeah, it's great. That's
wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, I like the old friends idea a lot because then it kind of serves the same purpose in a way that at least you have a contact to go to and say, hey, I know you. And then whether they're mad at you, you still...
Right.
Who knows what the outcome will be?
Yeah, a lot of these abilities are really cool. So I think the choice that you have so far means that Noirana will be just exceptional at acquire assets and lay low, which will give the group a lot of versatility in being able to address specialized missions and not suffer as much backlash and entanglement from the missions that you run. So that's pretty cool. Did you have any questions about character creation for Noirana before we check in with DongWon?
No, I think I've got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is it Noirana or Noirana? Is it
Noirana?
Noirana? Like, can you spell it for me?
It's Noerana.
Noer.
Pronounce it.
Say again.
I'm French Canadian. We don't do O and E's together. How should we pronounce it? Noirana? I can't even twist my tongue.
You. I'm just asking how you would.
Yeah, let's go Noirana.
Noirana.
Yeah, with a low O. What?
The pronunciation in Star Wars is incredibly inconsistent. So
that's true.
Nora, you know, or something.
Han, Leia, Leah.
Yeah,
True.
Exactly. Where the entire like last half is silent. Just a bunch of you know.
It's just no. Why are you asking?
Just exactly. My name is No. So.
Okay. So yeah, DongWon, tell us a little bit more about your character.
Okay, so I am playing a mystic. They use they, them pronouns. Their official name is THR-51-1 because they are a droid. They are generally referred to as Thrush, and they kind of go by Thrush. They have been a family heirloom of Narana's family for a few generations now. Basically, I think the idea is like their great uncle acquired Thrush from some kind of scoundrel who salvaged Thrush from some ancient ruin or something like that and rebuilt them. So they're kind of like they wear a lot, like they're kind of like a very spindly, tall robot with 6 legs, basically. So they kind of clatter around on the ground and sound a bit like a metal spider as they're walking around. And they wear a large robe over their clothing. I'm dropping an image into the Twitch chat just so people can see it. They're sort of like wear basically like a technical fabric poncho over their body, because what is real, or what will be revealed if they ever open their cloak, is that their chest is sort of like a metal cage, and inside of that cage is a kyber crystal. And no one really knows a lot about kyber crystals. It's sort of my sense of this thing, but it does give them some access to what would normally be called force powers. And that's sort of how we're pulling in some of the mystic abilities, because in Scum and Villainy, there's this thing called the Way, which is very different from the Force. There's no similarity whatsoever. So a mystic character has access to the Way, which lets them perform certain special abilities that sort of tap into the universe. So Thrush is sort of an advisor, assistant to Narana, who has sort of taken on a personal spiritual advisor role to them in particular, and has been sort of giving them advice on how to handle the situation and maybe talking them through some grief and trauma in the very near future. So going to the character sheet, does that make sense, Mike? Or
Yeah.
Okay, so Thrush has 1 in Doctor, 1 in Hack, and 1 in Rig. Basically, being a droid, it felt like Hack and Rig made a lot of sense. I put 1 in Doctor because Thrush finds organics to be deeply revolting and disgusting. And sort of in that way, when you become too obsessed with how gross something is, you kind of get good at understanding how they're put together. So they would hate to perform Doctor abilities on a body, but fundamentally a body is just a system, and it's basically like rigging, but like infinitely grosser and unpleasant. They have 1 in Scramble, which is sort of the default, comes with Mystic, and then I put 1 in Scrap as well. They do enjoy getting into a fight.
Oh no.
And then in Resolve, they have 2 points in Attune, which again is a Mystic default. It makes sense. Attune is sort of the way in this universe that you access, sort of extra normal abilities.
For everybody's context, Attune, kind of in those overall Scum and Villainy, is stuff that looks like force powers, and that extends to the level of I describe the characters getting ambushed, and then a character might say, I want to flashback to right before we walk into the room, and I'm going to roll Attune to see this coming. Because like foresight is something that could be covered by Attune mechanically, and I think that fits with the Star Warsy kind of stuff. And as we're playing, it is a common thing in Star Wars that the story reveals that the Force can do a thing that no one has used the Force to do before. So I'm totally open to that being an option. If I feel like it breaks the narrative, I might say, I think you're going to start with lesser effect, or let's kind of try to negotiate what makes sense here. And that applies for everybody. If you have 0 in Attune, but you feel like this is a moment where, kind of your character might connect with something in the universe that would inform how they're acting, then that's fine. I do want to make this something that is accessible to everybody, because one of the things that I feel about Star Wars is that I'd like to see the Force be something that is more materially relevant to more people in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm. And I think one important thing that I want to flag about Thresh is that, they have access to what we think of as Force powers. They would not call it Force powers. They sort of reject the paradigm of the Sith and the Jedi and have a very different view of how that power works in the universe. And specifically, they see it as very probabilistic in nature. So think more like Chirrut Imwe walking through a field of blaster bolts than, a Jedi deflecting them with their lightsaber, right? It's much more organic, I think, and much more about influencing outcomes rather than sort of a very like throwing people across the room kind of ability. That said, there are two special abilities. The starting ability is a thing called the Way, and that means that you can spend a gambit instead of paying any stress cost, which will make a lot more sense once we get into, I think, how the game works. But basically, instead of using stress, I can sort of pull on the group resource of gambits to avoid a cost of an action. And then the special ability I picked is Sundering, which is you may push yourself to attune to the Way and twist it, causing psychic harm to anyone in the area vulnerable to your assault. You may spend 1 stress for each additional feature. It damages instead of stuns, and you and anyone you choose get plus 2d to resist the effects. So this is sort of a big AoE attack that I can apply to the room. Unfortunately, it applies to everyone. So everyone has to roll resist if it happens. So, I think this is, we'll see how this plays out. We'll see under what conditions Thresh wants to use this skill that they have.
Right.
And I'm really seeing that as them sort of tapping into that kyber crystal and sort of really affecting everyone around them. Right. I haven't picked a vice for them yet, and I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring that out. So I'll figure that out before our first session. It's not going to come up for a second.
Your vice is a tendency to do psychic damage to people. That's the every so often I'm just like, oh man, and then your brain melts. I'm sorry, I have
my vice is giving everyone on the ship a headache on a regular basis.
I apologize for my migraine presence as it continues.
Exactly. I'm giving them a vice. I'm giving the vice of cold, and that's
trauma.
Yeah, or a trauma. Sorry, of cold.
Yeah, I think that works, and because for me, I interpret that as you as a player interested in kind of maybe some of the gap between how Thresh's emotional landscape operates and how the human characters do.
Mm-hmm. And, I think this is going to be a slightly different view of droids than we've seen really in the Star Wars universe before. The droids are very human in the Star Wars universe, I mean, think of like C-3PO's fussiness or, L3 being very like droid rights kind of thing. And, I think Thresh is going to have a very different relationship to the organics around them.
Cool. And DongWon, did you have any questions about anything before we move on?
No, I think I pretty much got it.
Cool.
There.
All right. And
yeah, I just got to figure out vice, that's all.
Sure thing. We'll check in. Greg, having gone through everything else, do you still feel good? Do you have any questions about character sheet stuff?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think we talked about the specifics. So I have 2 because I decided it's okay to show people because whatever. So I have 2 in scrap, which is probably not surprising given the sort of more fighting emphasis. We already talked about the 2 in command. I did play with the idea because he's not a meathead, I didn't want that assumption to be presented, but I think he has a reasonably strong moral code. I think that sort of establishes him as like, look, here's how this is going to play. And that's, this is how we're going to do things. So I think that fits with that kind of quality. The rig, I have 1 rig, and the idea there was basically in managing his suit and his armor and being able to kind of, if you think about the Mandalorian having to fix his own armor and having to kind of tend to himself because other people are going to do it. And this is even more important since Raul, for reasons we may get into during the game, is not technically Mandalorian anymore, and so doesn't have an obvious connection to go to with that. and then study, because of study being the kind of thing of studying the way that others are in combat. I think he's, as working as part of Clan Grey Fox, he is he's not really, I guess you could call him a mercenary, but he's had to be a little bit of a survivor, so he's had to be able to manage different things, which means not just put on armor and wade into a fight, but that definitely is more of what he prefers. So like the doctor thing, he certainly appreciates people that heal him, but it's not something which he's too busy beating people up usually to attend to that. Although he will try to protect his party. And I guess this is one thing I did want to ask everybody. So I've got Unstoppable, which means that I can push yourself to do one of the following: perform a feat of physical force that verges on the superhuman, engage a small gang on equal footing in close combat. Like, that's perfect for him. The question really was between Wrecking Crew and Bodyguard. The Bodyguard thing says when you protect a crewman, you resist with an extra die. When you take harm, you clear one stress. And that obviously fits insofar as I'm protecting Norana's character. And so as security, it makes sense I would do that. But Wrecking Crew is your strength and ferocity are infamous. When striking in melee, you gain an extra die. Whenever you spend a gambit in combat, you also gain +1 effect on that action. And that kind of fits more in the send him into a room and wait till the screaming stops, type of thing. So I think I personally lean a little more towards Wrecking Crew, but I don't know if there's a way to do that while still managing. He's a character that wants to defend the crew, and in particular Norana, which is his charge by the clan, and is therefore very oriented toward this found family thing. But I think he sort of instinctively would be more likely to do that by going, now I'm going to walk into the bar so that my friends don't get hurt when I'm done with whoever's in the bar, So I'm not sure, I guess, whether I'm asking I'm asking all of you folks whether it makes sense to do Wrecking Crew or Bodyguard, given those two.
I mean, I guess my question is he more like Captain Rex from Clone Wars or Amos from The Expanse, right? Like, I think those are the two versions of those characters. Is he someone who is sort of like, he does have that vibe of, like, both characters are badasses, right?
Right.
But one is someone who is more interested in the unit and protecting the group, and one is more interested in breaking things when it's necessary, right? Both are very loyal to their crews, both are very loyal to their families, and are really primarily interested in defending the people around them, right?
Yeah.
And for clarity, anybody can try to resist a consequence on behalf of another character.
Right.
So you don't need the Bodyguard ability to try to protect somebody else. The Bodyguard ability means that you do it way better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, he feels, I don't know, he feels more Wrecking Crew to me. I think. Yeah.
I think it's fun as hell.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. That's a helpful clarification, because it's
Right.
close. Because you're right. I was very anxious to, like, he's not just Berserker. I run into, like, I wanted to specify that wasn't exactly it. So
he's Mandalorian, right? Like, Mandalorians,
right? They're not morons about it, right?
Sit back and wait attitude, though. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Everyone in chat's like, Amos.
So the thing that Unstoppable plus Wrecking Crew does is it means that you could, if we have the scene of the group in an arena fighting like big Star Wars monsters, Raul could just step forward and, like, hand to hand with the trio of velociraptors.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, like against the Rancor, he's not throwing a skull at a freaking door button, okay, and waiting. All right, like, that's not how this goes down. Like,
yeah, because increased effect means that you can do more against an enemy who normally you wouldn't be able to do as much to. So, a person fighting a Rancor is like, oh, well, a Rancor is a much larger creature, so just punching it would have reduced effect. If you have Wrecking Crew, you get more effect.
Yeah, I love it.
And
okay.
if you, if you can perform a feat of physical force that verges on the superhuman, then maybe you throw the rock so hard that it would really hurt a Rancor.
Yeah.
So those two abilities together will let you do the thing of, like, David and Goliath thing, or it will let you kind of be a whirlwind of destruction against a group.
Okay. Yeah. X-Men said in chat, if the opponent is dangling from my grasp, he's not hurting any of my crew. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
it.
you can, like, this is
can't
the
hurt
kind of
you
game
if you're not able to move.
right. This is the kind of game where if I declare a consequence, Fireball gets hit by a blaster bolt, Greg could say, oh, no, I'm going to resist that. Raw's going to resist that by punching their face in.
Yeah, exactly.
Before they can take a shot.
By hitting them in the face with their own gun. That's how that actually works.
Yeah, and that, like, because of how this game works, like, I'll declare a consequence, and then somebody else can say, actually, it doesn't happen that way. Here's how I resist it. So it's again, very back and forth. And I want to encourage everybody to feel like they can kind of interject into the narrative and say, instead, let's do it this way, either mechanically or what if it were like this?
Cool.
Very, very shared authority. So that's all the characters. The other big mechanical thing to do before we have a first session is to build the spaceship.
Yeah, the ship.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
In Blades in the Dark, your crew of scoundrels has a crew sheet that represents the gang itself. In Scum and Villainy, the ship is the crew sheet, which is pretty fun. So Joyce, you had proposed Fireball being the one with the ship. Did anybody feel especially strongly about being the person who has the ship?
I like that idea. I guess my question is, why wouldn't Norana have a ship, right? As sort of an official diplomat,
Right.
I think one thing we've sort of seen in the Star Wars universe is, Senate members and diplomats tend to fly around in their own personal craft.
Right.
That's, I'm thinking of like Padme's sort of silver Neptune ship, right? I'm fine going either way. Like, we could say that Norana lost access to her ship for some reason, and that's sort of why we need Jet, and that might be a good reason to bring Jet on board. You know what I mean? Or Fireball, whatever. So I kind of like that as a concept, and like might build out the character relation a little bit more. That we're all sort of like kind of at Fireball's dispose or like mercy in a certain way, and that might make this whole dynamic make a lot more sense and put some tension into it. But then my question is, what happened to Norana's ship?
Or, I mean, the other way to look at that might be that, so Norana's ship was the same ship that she was on when Alderaan was destroyed, whatever. And so it's, if you're thinking of like a government in exile or like government officials in exile, the ship does that. But the ship itself, because there was not really any, we can come up with some reason as to why maintenance on it wasn't really easy to be done. I don't know, Joyce, whether this is something Fireball does, but it could be that Fireball is like capable of keeping things running on a ship better than anybody else is. And so it's one of those deals that gets in the point you were making, DongWon. Like, that way there's you kind of need Fireball for stuff, and Fireball's like, no, it's fine. Like, you put, you use duct tape here and you put glue and tape here and that will work. And I can imagine me being like, what the hell is this? Like, what, really? Like, this is how, how safe is this really? And you're like, it's fine, it works, or whatever.
I mean,
but I don't know if you want to do that or not, but that's one possibility.
What if we had to abandon our very nice Alderaanian cruiser because of the right? Like, as an Alderaanian diplomatic mission, the Empire had a very clear idea of who we were and where we were.
I see. Yes. Yes.
We needed to get away from
that works too.
It would make sense based on how I'm thinking about the Empire's response to Alderaan overall. If we're going with the idea that Alderaan did have strong ties to the rebellion, as Marie suggested, which I think absolutely makes sense in the text and especially for this game.
I mean, Norana in particular had a connection to the rebellion, right?
Yeah, and that the Empire would just basically rescind all of the clearances for all Alderaanian ships that remain.
Yeah, so might as well get rid of it at that point, which would make sense, just so that we don't get destroyed right from the get-go. It might have been something even that would have been discussed, because if Norana is a minister, then they would have probably had a backup plan, not of the planet blowing up, but what if you're in a sector that's suddenly overrun by the Empire? So it might have been something that was already partly implemented or thought about. Of what do you do? And then it just happened that everywhere was suddenly not Alderaan friendly. So
and I don't know, I'd be fine with Norana's ship being stashed somewhere, and that is that's a tripwire that somebody could activate. Either somebody steals the ship, or you go back to get the ship because somehow you need 2 ships to do something. And that way, it's not written off entirely. It's something where if the group goes to it, you know that it's gonna come with strings attached.
Yeah, it's parked on a tarp in some shipyard on Tatooine, or not Tatooine, some backwater planet like that.
Right.
And that's Fireball and their
cover it something, duct tape or cover
Duct tape.
Love.
Yeah.
I like the
Just
idea that I
attend.
disagreed with the decision too. That I like the idea that I was like, this is not, we should not be, this is not smart. And everyone, I basically got overruled because everyone's like, this is the smart thing to do. So we have to be on this ship that I'm kind of like, I can't believe. Like I can imagine myself complaining about like the ship and constantly, what is this? Anyway.
Yep.
So the Alderaan ship was very
Are we
nice.
going like trust?
Right, and Norana was like, no, it's fine. This is what we need to do. Like you can try, and I'm just kind of like, look,
So mechanically, there's 3 types of ship builds in Scum and Villainy. Making a custom ship is kind of a headache, and so I would rather that unless it feels like it's really dissonant, I would ask us to try to fit one of these 3 types.
Okay.
So basically, there is the Star Dancer, which is like the Millennium Falcon class ship. It's for illicit merchants, smugglers, and blockade runners. And it's a freighter type ship. It has 2 gambits, which is kind of the average. You'd get a +1 because of having a scoundrel character. And so ships have a few different stats. So I'll just walk through these really quick, and then we can get context as needed. So they have 4 stats, which are engine, hull, comms, and weapons. So the Star Dancer by default has a 1 in engines with a jump drive installed, which is just you can go to light speed. And available are afterburners, which is like sublight boosters. Hull 2 installed cargo hold and smuggling components. Comms 0, nothing installed. Available fake transponder, quantum encryptor. Weapons 0 of 2, nothing installed. Starting upgrades, you get a galley, which is an auxiliary upgrade, and training insight, which means that whenever the characters are training insight skills, they're going to advance more quickly. So that's one type of ship. The Cerberus is for bounty hunters and extraction specialists. So it's more like the Slave One ship of Boba Fett's, or the Razor Crest from The Mandalorian. It has 2 in comms with a long-range scanner, 1 in engines with a jump drive, 0 in hull, 1 in weapons with a grappler arm installed. And then it has a brig and prowess training. It starts with only 1 gambit. And then the third ship is a much bigger ship by default. It's called the Fire Drake, and it's for rebels and hegemonic criminals. So it's more like whatever I forget the name of the ship in the show Rebels, the Star Wars ship, whatever that one is.
The Ghost.
The Ghost. Thank you. So the big thing about the Fire Drake is that it is too big to easily land on a planet, compared to something like Slave One, the Razor Crest, or the Millennium Falcon. Instead, you have a shuttle that goes down to land on planets.
It feels like a little much for a crew that's trying not to. I mean, we don't have a retinue, that sounds like the ship I would like us to be on, but I think that's probably not what we likely would actually be on.
So I think the qualities of the ship really match sort of us as sort of like a burgeoning rebel faction in some ways. You know what I mean? Like looking at the abilities that sort of come with the Fire Drake, it kind of makes a lot of sense to me in certain ways, right? Like,
yeah. So what I would say is I'm fine to have the ship for this crew use the Fire Drake playset, but then we'll make some adjustments so that it is still really more like freighter or small corvette size.
Mhm.
I shared on the kind of player Discord a bunch of different sample pictures,
Yeah.
and the one that seemed to get the most interest from the group was actually, I think it was unused concept art from the last season of Clone Wars.
Oh, fun.
With it kind of has a like a disc with thrusters on both sides and some built-in weaponry.
Yeah, I want to find that to put that in check because that was really, I love that thing.
Yeah. So, Joyce, did you have other ideas about kind of what you wanted? What, like, if it's your ship, what did you like? What kind of Star Wars ship would you like Fireball to have?
Okay. I kind of like the. Wait, hang on a second. I like option 5. Ship option 5. The Corellian something class. Can't see it. Corvette.
Corvette, yeah.
Yeah.
Something small and sleek enough to to evade detection from the Imperials.
Right.
So just like a fast ship.
Yeah. So for listeners and viewers, this ship kind of looks like if you took the Tantive 4, the blockade runner from the first Star Wars film, and you cut it off at about halfway through, so it doesn't have the back like big set of thrusters. It's it seems like a kind of a shorter ship, but it still has that kind of linear. It's long rather than wide. A couple of guns. What looks like a hatch on top, like 2 burners on the side, and then 2 pods that come out. So it's like almost like a small hammerhead with a little bit of a bump in the middle, and then the 2 thrusters at the back to kind of give you a silhouette. How does this design work for everybody else in terms of a place to have adventures on?
I dig it. I want a different paint job.
Yeah.
Change his colors to camouflage. Camouflage colors, like
fireballs on the side, super
camouflage.
Well, it's like the comedy, right? Yeah, it's like it's got the star, it's painted, for the camouflage reasons for stars, but then Fireball's like, no, it's got so then there's also fireballs, which completely ruins the whole camouflage star concept. They're just like down the side, like, oh, come on now.
It sounds good.
It's like,
but it looks good. It looks good in the freaking dock,
The hot rodding tradition is like a thing that matters for Star Wars.
Yeah, lots of chrome.
Like Greebles kind of are a manifestation of that, like put the engine on the outside of the hood kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Did we decide on Fire Drake, or I feel like Stardancer or Fire Drake makes sense to me. Cerberus doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. Not Cerberus, but Stardancer or Fire Drake is okay with me.
I mean, Fire Drake makes sense to me in terms of like crew abilities, and then Stardancer makes sense to me in world as like that's the ship that Jet would have.
Yeah, because I feel like Fire Drake's too big. Well, anyway,
I'm totally fine to use like the starting systems chunk from Cerberus, but then the play sheet stuff from Fire Drake. Strash and John are probably not going to come after me if I do this for playing their game wrong.
No, you mean from Stardancer, not Cerberus, right? Or do you?
Correct. So stats would line up more with something like a Millennium Falcon, but then the special abilities are the more new one. And that could also be when you play the crew of the Fire Drake, you earn XP when you execute a successful job that opposes Imperial dominance, is how that XP trigger would read.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I'm just going to fill some things in on the character sheet here. I'm going to write Fire Drake and then see if it will see how hard it is to then change other things. Looks like it's not hard at all. So I'm going to fill that in. For any of you that have access to the Scum and Villainy sheet, we'll think about which upgrades and special abilities you all want to take. And then some of that will also inform some relationships to factions. I've created about a dozen factions, but then if someone's like, oh, well, I really want to have a faction that does this and then to have a relationship with them, that's totally fine. We'll just add them. So I'm just going to fill some stuff in here and try to not have too much dead air.
How many, what do we get to pick? Sorry.
So the first thing, all crews start with 2 cred. So I'll fill that in. You choose a reputation for the crew. And this could mean, oh, well, this one crew has already done one thing. Or it could be, this is the reputation you are shooting for the group to have. Reputations. Where does it say reputations? Ambitious, brutal, daring, honorable, professional, savvy, strange, and subtle are the reputations that's the list that's suggested.
I feel like ambitious or honorable makes sense to me, but
Agree.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And maybe a bit of strange.
Oh yeah, like strange was the other one that I was like,
honorable with a touch of strange, like a soupçon of strange.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I feel like ambitious seems more gameplay wise interesting.
Yeah, how does it described? I mean, how is it described in game, Mike? The ambitious, like what would that?
That is totally, it's what you want it to be.
Okay.
So that can be ambitious. You're going up against the Empire, or it could be ambitious. The crew is really pushing to get big payouts in order to do whatever it is that the group is wanting to do. It's really about how you role play the crew and the way that the crew approaches and executes missions.
Okay.
I guess it would help establish lines too for the crew and how we would play it too, like where does ambition start to step on honor or loyalty or any other.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends how we want to play.
I mean, or we can interpret ambitious as like pushing the rebellion forward, right? Like
we'll get it done type of thing.
Yeah.
Get it done.
I like that.
Get her done.
All right.
Get it done.
So
Get it done.
All right. That'll be our philosophy. Get her done.
Get her done. Our philosophy is mater from Cars. Tremendous.
All right. So this ship is going to have 1 in engines, 2 in hull, 1 in weapons, and 0 in comms as a base. And then I'm going to go back to add 2 systems to the ship or improve crew quality. So systems are the kind of the ship stats. So crew quality is basically, it sets the tier for the group. So the question here is, do you want the crew to be tier 0, which is effectively you're at the very bottom end of Scrappy, and you're going to face more of a tier challenge in fighting groups that are more like larger groups with better equipment? Or is the crew tier 1 that represents a higher tier of gear that you all have, and you're going to be less, you're going to be kind of fighting uphill less often, but the ship won't get as many bonuses to the different stats. So you can have higher tier, which is more about you as characters and how outgunned you are, versus improving the qualities of the ship, which are more like if you're going to do ship stuff.
The only thing I would want to point out is, I think role-playing wise, the reason we have this ship is fake transponder, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that will be under so apologies here. Some of this ship stuff is still a little bit confusing to me, even though I've played a fair amount of Scum and Villainy. So we may come back and errata some of it when we get into session 1, because I will have realized that it makes sense to do something differently. But I think DongWon's point about fake transponder is a very good one.
Yeah, it's
Does that mean we mark one in comms as well, or no? We just pick fake transponder. Yeah.
I'm not especially sure what the book says, but I think if basically for every point you have in a rating, you're going to be able to have one of these things. So the ship would need a comms of 1 to have a fake transponder. So that probably means upgrading comms and one other area.
Any feeling about what else we should upgrade? Engines, hull.
What is a coherence cannon?
Coherence cannon is basically, it's a bigger gun.
Okay. It coheres better.
In the book, coherence cannon is a capital weapon. One shot only until repaired or recharged on ships smaller than dreadnoughts. May fry systems. Incredibly deadly. Super not legal. So that
I love the idea of the break glass in case of emergency, like Fireball being like, well, we could do this. We could do it once. Like, what does the once mean? You know? I don't know.
Not to go back
Kind
to
of wave motion gun, like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like. Oh, man.
This is like the Rocinante's railgun, right? Like they can't fire it that often, but every now and again, like.
Yeah. Oh man.
In case of emergency, pick the damn clock.
Yeah, so
I thought you
right
said
now,
never to touch that thing. Don't touch that button, you said.
right now, the ship has particle cannons, which I just interpret as like 1 or 2 of the turret guns, like in the Millennium Falcon, where somebody can control it, or you can control it from the cockpit, maybe with a reduced effect or reduced position. Adding another weapon system would be like, and we have missiles, or and we have like a grappling hook, or and we have something else. You know, like another weapons system might be like flak, like the equivalent of like chaff, where you throw stuff off to try to make it easier to escape something. And here I'm fine for people to just be like, well, what if what if the ship had this? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the rule book.
I'm just trying to think of like stuff Star Wars ships have.
Right. Right now, the ship under hull has a cargo hold. Crew quarters are technically their own thing. Other hull modules are a landing bay to accommodate shuttles and single pilot small fighter craft, or smuggling components.
Do we have like maybe like a tiny 1-person you know, like not shuttle, but like a basically a vehicle that you could get in that would be essentially like repairing around the outside of the ship in deep space, that doesn't involve just putting on a suit, you know, like something
kind
that
of
could
like
just,
EVA. Like
yeah, something, and which could either be autonomous or would have to be piloted by one of us, which could be interesting. And
I will say that the only person who has rig is your droid.
No, I think Raul has 1 in rig.
I do have 1 in rig.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I do have 1 in rig. But so I could theoretically, yeah, like I could, you know, and that also, yeah. So anyway, I just, it struck me that might be one possibility rather than having a full shuttle, and, you know, which seems maybe a little much. But
fire trait kind of by default comes with the shuttle, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the ship to be kind of narratively smaller and therefore easier to smuggle, if you had a shuttle, it would need to be like smooshed on the side of the ship.
Again, I'm thinking of like the Ghost here, right? That has that little shuttle dock on the back.
Right.
Our version is actually held on again by duct tape.
Spit and duct tape. And good luck.
Yeah,
cut it with
It's got
some
green
scissors to
decals.
yeah, exactly.
You can have a shuttle as ship
which
gear,
are not on, right?
Yeah.
which is one of the things that you can get. Because basically, the steps remaining for crew creation are choose a special ability for the whole crew, which will be like using the Fire Drake, there are more rebellion-y ones. Assign upgrades. Add 2 upgrades to the ship. These can be crew or ship upgrades, or ship modules if you have the systems. So basically, if we had hull 3, we could go up to 3 systems. And then you choose a...
So did we use both of our upgrades to get the fake transponder then? Because we had to go up 1 in comms and then take the fake transponder.
I'm fine to just say that whatever rating you have, you get that many things. Yeah,
okay.
We're doing a mini series, so I'm fine to like boost things up a little bit.
So we need to pick one more upgrade. Or not upgrade. We need to pick one more module, right? One more system.
Yeah, so raising comms to 1 to be able to have a fake transponder, and then you can raise engines to 2, hull to 3, or weapons to 2.
Weapons to 2. How about weapons to 2?
Yeah, we've got to vote for weapons.
Because you guys want to scrap more than run away. I see how this is lining up.
I mean, listen, that would be my...
Protect ourselves. Protect ourselves.
Again, it's establishing realities.
We have to protect ourselves.
That means that you'll be able to have a second weapon system. So that could be more cannons, and then fictionally I would represent that as you being able to address more challenges at the same time. Or it could be like missiles, or any of those other things we talked about, or if somebody has another idea. And then you still have 1 space under hull, which can be that like airlock kind of place. Like if somebody had a fighter, or if somebody has like a ground vehicle, or that like repair module like Greg mentioned.
Should we take the big cannon thing, or should we take another turret?
I'm so tempted with it. I think the big cannon thing is just so fun narratively, but I don't know. I mean, maybe it's that thing which will sound awesome and we'll never actually use, but we'll like the final session will be epic when we fire that thing off. You know?
I like to do that. We can like fire 1 big shot at a Star Destroyer and then run away.
Well, yeah, somebody
is that like
exactly right. Somebody in chat said that it was like doing that, but then you have to run dynamos all night to try to recharge the whole thing. Like it's just it's like the Death Blossom in Last Starfighter. You know what I mean? You just fire it off once and that's it.
It could be like a retrofitted capital class ion cannon. Where you fire it, and then it's a roll of the dice on, do you get the ship back in condition to be able to run away before the Star Destroyer recovers from the ion blast? You know, I'm fine to have it to go for something that's kind of wacky.
Yeah, all the screens go blank for 2 to 3 seconds. Yeah.
Like,
I feel like
Joyce, do you have an idea of like what kind of ace in the hole would Fireball have installed on the ship?
The big cannon.
What were you saying, Marie?
I see, but we can do it. Just don't touch the...
I don't know. I feel like a big cannon kind of works narratively if it's Jet's ship, like
right. That's what I was saying. Yeah, like
it's
What?
it's not.
That's like your little modification, you know, like
right. Like
it just fires like a big red ball of energy.
Yeah, exactly. Accompanied by a power cord inside the ship.
I mean, that's
the whole ship glows with like neon lights.
And that's appealing to me because then it's really easy to use that to like apply consequences.
And it's always it's the automatic great effect gun, like with great effect, like maybe bad effect on us, but it's a great effect, like whenever it's there.
Okay. And what would the second hull option be? So you've got cargo hold, and then you could have one other thing. Let me flip back to the hull.
Like smuggler compartments would make sense to me.
Another thing I thought about was using that to do the equivalent of like a solar sail that would be used, especially like, for example, if, joking aside, you fire the big gun, or if there's other energy, like it could be used almost as an alternate energy source. Again, that's more DIY, but like that's another image
like
that I have.
Plan B.
Yeah. Like this is the thing I use when everything else breaks or whatever.
Weird umbrella ship.
Yeah.
And so you've got shields because Star Wars ships have shields, and then that shuttle could be swapped out for something under the ship here.
Oh, so we don't get the shuttle? Sorry.
I think you can have the shuttle if you want, or trade it out. There's a Land Rover. There's power reserves, which maybe you could tick power reserves to fire the cannon instead of having it like shut down most of the ship. Stasis pods, which is like if you need to put somebody into carbon freezing or something.
I mean, medical bay is always useful.
Yeah.
We also have the crew upgrades, so we can pick one from those too, right? And so like,
yes,
Way Blessed sounds real nice. Like Extra Gambit's really good. Popular Support's really nice.
Yeah, some of those require several upgrades worth to get.
Oh, I see.
So they do sound really nice.
I see. I get it.
Yeah, and then on Fire Drake, the special abilities list, you'll get one of these, and this is kind of a crew level ability.
Sorry, Fire Drake. That was Fireball.
Yeah, right. Yeah, having the big cannon certainly makes sense for how Jet earned that nickname, right?
Yeah.
I will say that if you have a big cannon on the ship, that will mean that you're going to attract more attention.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent of having heavy load.
Yeah. So I think another thing to think about there is, do you have some way? Does that ship have something that to fire the big cannon, like things open up and the big cannon goes out, and then otherwise it's hidden?
It's covered in a tarp.
Or
just like,
yeah.
You know, it's like.
Or does it just have like a big, like aftermarket capital cannon on it, and that Jet's approach is, well, I'm never going to let Imperials get close enough to notice it.
I feel like if we're getting rid of one ship to try to be a little bit like more under the radar, that perhaps hiring a ship with a giant cannon visible on the top.
Yeah, and so I want to be fans of the players and let you have a big gun that we can have dramatic moments around. But I think to respect the fiction, it would also make sense to ask, how do you all kind of keep that cannon under wraps? And it changes fictionally if you have to open up a compartment to bring the cannon out versus if you can just fire it whenever. So maybe the other hull component is like concealed compartment for the cannon.
Yeah. And what it would be, I love that idea. It would also be cool if in that component, like as a part of that, when like I could imagine also it being something that we've never really seen it fully deployed, and when that extra thing opens, it basically is sort of essentially unfolds into the gun. Like I'm just kind of like, what is this mess? And you actually show it as like it basically Voltron. It's like Form Blazing Sword, right? Like it just clicks into this gun, which would be pretty sweet. Yeah, I agree with that. It doesn't make sense to have this thing just sitting off at the bottom. Like that would be absurd. So. So we're not going to do fly tie body Steve Dancer. Everyone's like, why don't you just use like pipe cleaners to tie it to them? Like, no.
Hey.
So that would be your second hull component. And then you've got shields and a shuttle, and the special ability. So if you should be able to see the ship character sheet, and then you just click through the tabs underneath bioinfo, character sheet, and attribute and abilities until you get the sheet that says Fire Drake.
I mean, medical bay makes a lot of sense to me.
True.
Yeah, because without a medical bay, it will be much harder to do the kind of recover downtime action. You either need to acquire assets to get like the material, like, oh, I need the Bacta and the tools to do surgery on somebody.
That gives you +1D to all crew recovery rolls.
Yeah, that sounds smart.
That makes sense.
Especially as Greg's character is going to be like running into giant, I don't know, several giant beasts and incoming.
I'll be fine. It's just a flesh wound. To walk it off. I'll just walk it off.
So
that's the way.
That's right. This is the way. Someone said that in chat. I'm like, no, I have to point at Thrush's character and be like, no, that is the way. Like that is.
So is that a consensus on medical bay?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah.
Okay, and then the next to last thing is which special ability. So that's the
Don't
ones
we
that
get
say.
two upgrades?
I think the starting upgrades.
Yeah, assign upgrades, get 2 additional upgrades.
Yeah, so get that. So medical bay would be 1, and then these upgrades are where you also start to fold in factions. So let's do that while we're here. So I would say either for Jet or for others, basically some faction helped you get the medical bay, either refitting the medical bay once this group cohered, or somebody that installed the medical bay for Fireball when they got the ship to begin with.
So I like the idea of Fireball being entangled with some kind of criminal faction, like either a Hut clan or something like that.
They're in gambling debt to said group maybe as well.
Yeah.
And so I have a few criminal factions that I've already established, but I'm totally fine to add more. Right now, what I have is Kiba Market, which is a midnight/pop-up gray market that also serves as a smuggling ring. There's the Hundar Sisterhood, which is a recently formed bounty hunter cooperative. So they share resources, cost support. They tend to take no-kill bounties and are also decent at intelligence work. And Clan Grey Fox, which Greg's character is associated with. And this is basically like a turnkey military group. So the whole clan does that. They cover the full range of what war requires.
Criminal is a slightly provocative description for us, by the way. I'd say that's a little strong, definitionally.
I can move them over to the fringe category if you feel very strongly.
Because we're more, well, look, you got the White Falcons, the Blue Devils, and I'm hanging out with the Hundar Sisterhood. Like, I feel like the Clan Grey Fox.
Mike, I'm going to request that we change the name of the Blue Devils because that's the Duke basketball team.
Oh, yes. Oh, God, please. As a UConn alum, I also would disapprove highly.
As a Duke alum, I need that to go away.
How about the Huskies? Put that in the fringe. I'm semi-joking about the criminal. They would absolutely not see themselves that way, though, for whatever that's worth. I'm just, you know what I mean? I don't think. But everyone else might see them that way. I mean, that's probably fair.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking of how the Mandalorian clan is presented on The Mandalorian.
Right.
And I feel like they feel more like fringe than criminal.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So we have the Blue Kestrels instead.
Great.
Nice.
Maybe we're in debt to the Kiba market. I kind of like that idea in terms of like.
I could see that.
It's working for them in some smuggling capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So you can either, if you did a job for them, or if they, or if you bail them out of trouble, they like you and you get +1 status from them. At your option, spend +1 cred to repay their kindness and take +2 status with them instead. So did they broker the deal for you? Did you run a job for them to get the thing? Or did you screw them over? Did you steal it from them? Did you take it from their ship? Was it illegal and now the hegemony, or now the empire is after them for taking it? They don't like you and you get -2 status with them. At your option, the crew can spend 1 cred to mollify them and take -1 status with them instead. Tell us how you smooth things over. So basically how you got the thing from them informs whether they like you or dislike you. And then you can make them dislike you less or like you more by spending 1 of your crew's starting credits.
Yeah, because like, is the ship kind of really repossession worthy? Like they like actually like the ship back, and they're kind of
It does have a big gun, so.
Yeah, exactly, and like they specifically said on the lease, no extra modifications. What is
no
this?
decals?
Yeah, exactly. Why is there a big dragon down the side of it shooting a fireball? Like what?
Strangely, they care more about the decal than the big gun.
Yeah, exactly. They did one of those walk around ding charts like at the rental places. They're just like, look, this was not here. This was not here. This was definitely not here.
So yeah, do y'all want to be friendly with Kiba Market, or another, like, have that the medical babe come from somebody else?
Is there, Mike? Is the Kiba Market have different factions within it a little bit? In that, let's say there's one person that works that is sort of the contact for Jet, but like most of the rest of Kiba Market is really done with Jet, and so this person's like, listen, I can't, you've got to pay this back, or I can't hold them off any longer. You know what I mean? That might be
like
one way to get around it.
Exasperated friend inside Kiba
Right,
Market.
exactly.
Yeah, because that could be, basically you could have a contact for the crew, or Jet could have a contact that's like, okay, somebody likes you in Kiba Market, but the rest are unhappy. So you could have a negative with Kiba Market, but then a positive relationship with somebody in that faction to represent that tension. Joyce, what do you think?
That's fine, because I think from so-called one of my friends is in a ship mechanic.
Okay.
J-A-L.
Yeah, and all of, you can replace, change out any of those names if you like. Most of them are okay for Star Wars, but you know, do whatever you like. So is that a -2 with Kiba Market, or did you kind of pay them off a little bit to go down to -1? A -2 is they actively don't like you, but they will not sacrifice their own interest just to spite you.
I vote for -2. It just
-2,
that sort of
yeah.
get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds right.
Oh dear.
All right, so then you get one other upgrade from another faction, and I would generally recommend that be a faction you are friendly with.
I mean, gray foxes make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean that.
Yep.
Right. I was gonna say that's. I would say that we have a good connection with them, and one of my contacts is actually the head of my individual contacts is the head of Clan Gray Fox. So.
Right. So which upgrade is that going to be associated with?
So in other words, because of the connection with them, that gave us one of these upgrades, is what you're saying?
Right. Either you did a job for them and they gave you the thing, or you bought it from them and you're on friendly terms with them.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, I would say okay, so my thought would be that when we first got the ship, Jet was like, look, I got this. And then we had the big cannon. And I was like, this is ridiculous. We need a cannon that we can actually use more of the time and not just once and then it shuts us down for a day. And so then I went to Clan Gray Fox, and they were the ones who helped us get the actual particle cannons, the sort of regular work-a-day. You fire this without destroying your ability to fight, like as is the case with the other gun. That would be my thought, but it's just an idea.
I like
Sounds good.
I think we need one more upgrade, and then we need to pick our special ability.
So, on the ship sheet, there's crew/ship upgrades, and then auxiliary ship gear, crew gear training. Those are all available, and you get one box. So popular support, way blessed, and driven all cost several to get, but you could get any one other of the one box options. So that's stuff like a workshop, which would be for like greater effect and position for like weapon and tinkering. It would probably be helpful if Thrush got really damaged and needed assistance in repair. But then there's also stuff like different training options.
I'm also looking at like contacts or secret base.
Sure.
And power reserves is the other one. That seems interesting to me.
Where are you seeing? I'm sorry. Where are you seeing these?
So this is on the ship, and you scroll down beneath special abilities.
I'm scrolled down, but I don't.
Auxiliary, ship gear, training, and crew gear, and they each have a list.
Oh, I see. Where's the? Did you say secret base or something?
Yeah.
That one is.
Oh, that I see it. So what is that? Is that just what it says? Like it's just our
Well, you would get to decide what that looks like. That one of you has access to a relatively small secret base somewhere that is by default, like it is secret, so it's not known to the Empire. They would have to, I would have to build a clock that was, base location discovered, and that would be someplace that you could, as a group, retreat back to.
that could
That's
easily be.
either-
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry.
That could be a hidey hole that Fireball already had. It could be something that one of these other characters knew about. It could be a like rebellion safe house.
That could be provided by the Clan Grey Fox too. Sorry.
You have found and commissioned a hiding spot away from the baleful gaze of the hegemony, the Empire, where you and your allies can meet, hide, lick your wounds, and plan your jobs without the hegemony finding out. It's secret for now.
I mean, that could also be provided by Clan Grey Fox. It would be the kind of thing they would have a few of these kind of planned out throughout the galaxy. And if it does get violated, if that does at some point get discovered, then that would also piss off, the clan, because they'd be like, hey, like we don't have a lot of these, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Classic Orb
We
makes
own
the
a
point.
lot to Great Clan Grey Fox.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, that's true. I don't want to overdo that either, but I mean, it made sense. But we don't have to do that if we don't want to. A Classic Orb pointed out, how would an Alderaanian survivor feel about a ship with one really big gun? It could provide mixed reactions. I mean, yeah, like.
Depends what we're shooting at, I suppose.
Yeah, too soon. All right, Classic Orb, too soon.
I mean,
the planet just got blown up, man. Come on.
Yeah, large traumatic events have the tendency to encourage people to reconsider some of their firmly held beliefs.
Yes, that's true.
Sometimes.
But no, anyway,
so yeah.
Clan is up to you. We don't have to do the Clan Grey Fox thing as an option, but if you don't want to do it as far as the base, but.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you want to go with base, I would say that either it or something else should be that upgrade that builds a relationship with a faction, whether that is Grey Fox or somebody else. And then we're gonna select a couple of contacts, and you're gonna get status with their associated factions.
Sorry, say that again about contacts, Mike.
So after we finish with upgrades and the faction that goes with that, you as a crew will pick one contact you have a positive relationship with, one contact you have a negative relationship with, and then each of those characters is going to be associated with a faction, either an existing faction or we'll create a faction around them. So one you'll get a +1 with, and one you'll get a -1 with.
Yeah, I really like it as secret base. So.
Secret base.
Yeah, I love the idea
And
of secret base.
The exact details on that we can decide offline before we play next. It'd be great to be able to, put some of the faction stuff on screen so that folks who are listening and watching have a sense of like who the players in the game are going to be in terms of the factions that are likely to show up. Because the faction game is a great part of how Scum Villainy operates.
On the contact side of things, I think one thing we don't see enough of in the Star Wars universe is like mass media.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if there's like a underground, like a pirate radio rebel sympathizer, like somebody there that we're friends with.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Marie, are they somebody who like Noirana would have dealt with kind of being in the like galactic arts world?
Yeah, it could easily work into that. Like, I got a grant application. I couldn't fund it but it could definitely be in the arts world, and also that intersection of gathering information, and even like I'll feed you some interesting information if you feed me some back. Like it could be one of those contacts.
Right. So yeah, when you're selecting the contacts, anybody can just delete what's there and fill in whoever this person is going to be.
Although I do like the idea of that ancient cult mystic being someone that Thrush angered at some point because there was a big like, no, this is the way. No, this is the way. This is how the way works. And just accidentally got them, maybe they're even ticked off about like no droid can possibly understand the way as, but anyway.
Or
They
it's
may not
another
fit.
droid that they've been fighting for like decades
Right,
by now.
exactly.
Right, is like the like Thrush's rival on like galactic r slash racism.
Yeah. I do like that idea. The other thought I had was like, to borrow kind of the capital R rival mechanic from Beam Saber, like having basically a bounty hunter that's hunting us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, because these are crew scale contacts. You will all also get individual contacts. So it's probably good to think about these as people who the crew already has or will have a relationship with as a whole.
Maybe the bounty hunter is going after me. So it's like,
Ooh.
well, it's like it's not just. So we're not only running away from Imperials, I'm also running away from that bounty hunter who's like, yeah. Maybe he was ex-lover of mine as well, but less extra details.
So
Love affair gone wrong.
the pirate radio host, is that going to be a positive contact?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Pirate radio, yeah.
So I'm going to put a +1 there, and then are they just associated with like a pirate radio faction? Is that how that would look?
Their faction is the pirate radio.
Very subtle.
Very on the nose. They're just whatever, man.
Yeah.
We don't have to come up with a cool name, all right?
Right. They could have their own name. Like.
If the Rebel Alliance was organized enough to have a propaganda arm, that's effectively kind of how I'm seeing them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like it has to have some like ridiculous name, like I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I mean, the New Republic is already a publication.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I think it should sound like a bad zine from like 1983, right?
Okay. Or like.
And by
Is that
bad,
like
I mean great zine.
Galactic Truth.
Oh. Tinfoil head.
So the naming, we can do the naming later if needed.
Death Stars with a Z with a big red X through it as the,
Oh, yeah, exactly. Something like that.
So pirate radio.
We do not have a Wookiee character in this crew, Aaron. No, sadly.
They are probably a tier 2 faction because they're going to operate pretty widely.
Oh, classic or voice of Alderaan. Huh. That's interesting.
I mean, if we started a little bit after the destruction, I could see something like that, or an existing group like rebrands itself. That's certainly an option.
That could be interesting too, for like just thinking character arc for the noble. For her, it would be a way of keeping the arts alive for Alderaan and keeping its message moving forward in a way that works within her portfolio.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
the other thing I
important.
have for naming is something like very innocuous, right? Like classical, like smooth jazz,
Smooth jazz. Although Rudenel's
Wait, what's the,
Starbuster ST4R BUST3RZ is also encouraging, but I don't think it worked. But that's funny.
What's the what if it's like the Cantina Report or something like that, or like
Wretched Hive? We just got Wretched Hive
Wretched Hive.
at our theme song.
Space CB radio.
Yeah, there you go.
Total like.
What is that thing called? What's the music called from the Cantina?
Oh,
there's like some in-world Star Wars ridiculous name for it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh God, what is the moist? I'm gonna find it now. That's gonna bother me. Lord Dubstep the Wise, yes. Cantina.
If we make it like car talk radio, like the Greeble talk.
With the Boston accent too.
So the if I remember correctly, prompted by this thing, the actual title of the Cantina Band song is "Mad About Me."
Mad About Me. Yeah, I just saw it. Performed by Figrin Don and the Modal Nodes.
Oh yeah, Tales from the Cantina.
Oh man.
So yeah, it sounds like we've got a rough idea there. And then who would that -1 faction be? And this could absolutely be like some Imperial.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe maybe an Imperial, one of the regional governors.
So the Imperial squadrons I have are 07 Company, which is just it's a stormtrooper squadron. The 312th Legion, which is a group largely focused on like shipboarding, inspections, and contraband.
Wookiee and the Blowfish.
Wookiee and the Blowfish.
Oh,
terrible. I hate it.
I only want to be with you. Wookiee and the Blowfish. That's tremendous, Classicor. That's tremendous.
And then there is a Purge squadron in the Outer Rim. And they are the highest tier Imperial faction that I currently have listed.
I like that, actually. The 11th Purge Squadron, because they wiped out. So, yeah. Particularly brutal.
What was Callus's title from Rebels? What did they call him?
I haven't watched enough
Not
Rebels.
Inquisitor. Oops.
Was he just Agent Callus?
Imperial Operative?
Yeah, Imperial Security Bureau.
Yeah, agent of the Imperial Security
Yeah,
Bureau.
let's agent somebody or the other. You know what I mean?
Agent Callus.
Sure.
And they're part of the 11th Purge Squadron.
Yep.
Some like good British Imperial name.
Right. Is there a Vix in Star Wars already? Like Agent, like Vix as a last name? Either CKS or VIXX.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Sounds like Vapor Rob, but that's good.
I mean, yeah.
I can breathe nicely just thinking about it.
Vix
Get those sponsorships.
Vix is a boy band, but otherwise.
Gas giant indoor.
Vix could have family.
Yeah, Vax.
Yeah, I'm not pulling up other Vix. So Agent Vix sounds great to me.
Vix was a Rhodian male, appeared in the 2004 video game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, allegedly.
Okay, well Vix is probably dead, so we can have another one.
It definitely didn't actually make it.
By a couple millennia, I think, if I remember the time correctly.
Okay, and that's going to be a -1 for the squadron.
Yep.
And then let me double check to see if there's anything else that we want to figure out before we wrap up for today.
We need to pick an ability. We haven't picked our special ability yet.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, he was frozen in carbonite for 10 millennia. Exactly, Classicer.
So Sergeant,
special ability.
The kind of rebel style special abilities. So there's Old Hand. When you're at war or -3 status with an Imperial faction, all crew members get +1 device rolls and still get 2 downtime actions instead of 1. So basically, if you're at -3 with somebody, you're at all-out war with them, and it limits your downtime options. If you have this, it doesn't matter. Forged in Fire, your crew has been toughened by cruel experience. You each get +1D on all resistance rolls. That is very good. Sympathizers, your ideology is especially appealing. When you deal with a crew or faction, the GM will tell you who among them believes in your cause. So that might be somebody who's sympathetic to Alderaanian survivors, or it's somebody who's sympathetic to the rebellion in general, maybe. Natural enemies, when you run a job against Imperial factions, take +1D to the engagement roll. Engagement roll is what sets your starting position on a mission. So that's also really good. Then Spark of Rebellion. If you leave a calling card or highly visible symbol of resistance on the job, gain +2 heat, which is like negative attention from factions. But then your crew gains +1d to Vice during the next downtime and cannot overindulge. So you're kind of celebrating your victory, and it's easy to blow off stress and not have it cause problems. Just Cause. When your crew does the right thing at a cost to themselves, you may mark a crew XP.
I love that.
And Hearts and Minds. Each crew member may add 1 action rating to command, consort, or sway up to a max of 3, not a max of 2.
Just Cause.
I love Just Cause.
I like Just Cause.
But that's just
Just
may just be my thing. I don't know.
I mean, Just Cause makes a lot of sense for this crew. Like, I don't think I give a shit about it, but like, sorry.
It makes us, yeah.
DongWon, do you have another ability you're excited about?
Oh no, I like Spark of Rebellion too, but that's just the chaotic side of me as a player being like, let's cause a lot of trouble for ourselves. You know, I think that's very much like Sabine from Rebels painting on everything, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like Just Cause. I like Sympathizers as well, because I could see that being useful narratively speaking, but Just Cause is fun too. Because I have a feeling
Force and Fire is the one I want the most, but it doesn't make sense for our backstories, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Greg, how are you leaning?
Yeah, I'm more to I like Just Cause. I also thought about Sympathizers because of the Alderaan connection, but the thing about Just Cause is that probably that fits more of the found family thing, and as a crew experience, that's probably what we want, is to build up our crew, you know, as collectively working together, which Just Cause might do. So yeah, I think Just Cause was the one that immediately jumped out to me. But
okay,
I like Just Cause.
So that sounds like consensus there, or close to it.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
And you may at some point even be able to drag Thrush along too, making a decision.
Thrush isn't going to oppose it. I think they just don't really care about this whole situation.
Okay. So because you have a scoundrel, you're going to reset to 3 gambits at the start of each mission. You're actually a freighter instead of a corvette, because corvettes are much bigger. You'll start at crew tier 0, which is basically you're going to be facing more tier gap. So you're going to feel more like the underdogs, at least to start.
Which makes sense.
Yep. And I think between now and next session, I would ask everybody on your individual character sheets, come up with a positive contact and a negative contact.
Okay.
So the other ones are going to be neutral. So you meet them and they're not necessarily positive or negative on you to begin with, but you'll have one personal contact you have a positive relationship with, and one personal contact you have a negative with. So that's like a bounty hunter who you crossed swords with, or it's, maybe it's an Imperial who has a particular interest in you in a negative way, or like some diplomatic rival or anything like that. And I'll draw some of those characters in, plus the faction stuff, to start building some of the ideas. The last thing I would ask before we do wrap is to have folks revisit the question of when we want to start in terms of time related to the fall of Alderaan. So if this group has gotten together since the destruction of Alderaan, it seems like we're probably in the span of at least a few days to possibly a few weeks. If we get into a few months, it reduces some of that immediacy.
I'd be tempted to say a few days just to keep some of that immediate frantic power behind it.
So we're really just gotten on the ship with Jerry.
Okay. And relationship-wise, Greg, Rawl was already assigned to work with Nairana. Are you okay with that, Marie?
Yeah.
Okay.
How long have we worked together for? A bit, or?
I would say, a while, because it's enough to be able to build a bond And it was kind of a somewhat open-ended assignment from Clan Grey Fox, I think, because Alderaan knew that stuff was getting close to hitting the fan. Not to this degree, obviously, but they knew that there were problems. So, yeah, I would say some months. I don't know how many.
Perfect.
And then, if possible, I'd love to see if there's a way to have Jet and one of the other characters have a relationship that has gone beyond just these couple of days.
Maybe I got
If
to.
yeah, Joyce, what do you think about that?
Maybe I just have the feeling that Jet knows also Gregory's character.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like while they're fleeing, they realize, hey, I know Jet, who has a ship. So
does that work for you, Greg?
Yeah, that's
okay.
that I know you, or that my character knows you, or Marie's character knows you.
Your character knows me.
My character knows. Okay, right. So this is one of those deals where I was like, well, like I know we could try this person, because I'm coming, because I imagine, because it's not straight dislike, it's just deep frustration with Jet's things that happen. I would say, yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. So that works there. Coming back around, earlier on we discussed maybe the idea of introducing something like bonds or beliefs. And so mechanically what that would look like is, at the minimum, just putting some stuff on the character sheets that are about how the characters relate to one another. In Beam Saber, which I like their belief system, everybody writes one belief about every other character. It's something that the character believes to be true and informs how you think about them.
Okay.
When you do kind of the reduced stress ability, which in Beam Saber is called cut loose, you always do it with some other character. And then when you do that together, you write a new belief about that other character. And then when your beliefs are above 1, it costs more stress to assist that character because you care more about them, but they get a greater impact. If you get up to 4 beliefs with someone, you have a special scene that tests one of the beliefs that you have to see if it's really true. And then you reduce your beliefs from 4 to 1 again, and I think both characters mark XP. So what that would let us do is, it means that assisting each other can become more stressful, but we get more scenes during downtime of the characters together, and we have more mechanical focus that helps us think about and highlight the characters' relationships to each other. So how does that idea sound as something to port over from Beam Saber? Or we could modify it in some way.
The only thing I worry a little bit about with that is that I worry, this is just me personally, so I can be overruled. I already feel like Scum and Villainy, although I like it as a narrative system, does add a lot of extra little tick this, tag that, mark this, and I worry a little bit about another clock or sort of thing that I need to keep track of narratively that has or I should say mechanically, of a narrative interaction. So this is just me. I like the concept generally in an abstract way. I don't know that I'd want to have a clock essentially to mark off, when we're reaching things or not. But again, I can be overruled. I'm not like, I don't have strong opinions about it, but
what if we just bring in the belief statements as
I like that idea.
Not adding a mechanical component, because I do agree with Greg that like Forge in the Dark games, as much as I love them, are pretty crunchy, right? And like Beam Saber in particular is a lot of crunching. So I'm wondering if bringing that in might jar more than.
Joyce, Marie, what do you think?
I think that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of having like the belief statements with each of the characters at the beginning, narratively, just because it adds that tension of, is that belief true? And it kind of tells us where we are at the beginning of the adventure as well. It gives us like a gauge, and then we can kind of test that without necessarily impacting anything else but the role play itself, which is great already. So I quite like it.
So,
Greg, what's your character's name again? I'm sorry.
Raul Vardis. So it's RA''AL, and then Vardis is VARTIS.
So what that would look like is for each of you on your character sheets, you just write the other 3 characters' names, and you'd write like a 1-sentence belief that your character has about them. And then that is a tool that you can use for role play, because in the kind of experience framework, one of the questions is, did you express your beliefs, drives, heritage, or background? So if you express your beliefs about other characters, that's one of the ways that you take XP. So it would really easily slot into an existing system without adding a separate step. So how does that sound?
For example, the 3 beliefs I just wrote down real quick, and I might change these, but
Yeah.
like Alderaan fails to accept reality as it is. Norana puts more faith in people than she should. Jet is unpredictable and must be watched very carefully.
Yeah.
And that's just like how Thrush is feeling about the 3 people that they're with. You know what I mean? So
I
that's
like it.
the kind of statements you're looking for, is like, they may be true statements, or they may be just a thing that your character believes is true, and that affects how they interact with that person.
Your statement about my character is really funny when I consider the 3 things I've written down about your character.
Yeah, and in the Beam Saber campaign that I've watched, that Friends of the Table is doing, Partisan, the beliefs that characters have each other about one another, like really show how those characters think about each other, and most of them contradict one another.
And the way that I was thinking about it is like when you're 4 drinks in and you're at the bar and you're talking to one friend about another friend. Like, what's the thing you say at that point when you're drunk enough to, like, your inhibitions are down and you're gossiping about somebody, right? Like that's how I think of the belief.
That's a great way of thinking about it.
Right.
So yeah, like, and this means that it's very optional, because you can write it down and have it be explicit, or it can just inform role play, and then we can check temperature with everybody when we come back for the first session, and have it be a little bit more codified, a little bit less codified, and it doesn't have to add more crunch, which I think is a real solid concern. So we're approaching the hour. How does everybody feel? Is there anything that folks want to try and address or clarify real quick before we do outro?
One thing Chad is screaming for is a name of the ship. They're like,
Yes.
you haven't named the ship.
Porcupine. Sorry.
What?
Porcupine.
Porcupine.
The porcupine?
The red porcupine.
Okay.
I like it.
Oh my god! Because we have a big gun, so it's like a porcupine. We protect ourselves, right?
The classic was like perfect. Porcupine.
What's a porcupine? I was like,
Great.
The porcupine.
How about hedgehog then?
But is it like the
I think I like the hedgehog better, just because it's easier to
say.
Yeah.
Agree.
Hedgehog.
But it's like hedge-h-0g or something. Like,
Yeah.
Because like Millennium Falcon, like, that is a bird name. It's just that name is so established.
That's true. We have to add a space name onto it. It has to be like the Millennium so something hedgehog, like
fire hedgehog.
The fire
hedgehog.
Fire hedgehog.
Or is it like is it some like solar or star word?
The crimson hedgehog.
A star hedgehog. Oh my god.
The crimson hedgehog.
If it's like Millennium Falcon, is it like, okay, so like solar language or something like that?
The solar hedgehog.
Solar hedgehog.
What does that even mean? Oh man. Hedge Doge? No, we're not gonna do it as a meme, Max, man.
Lunar hedgehog.
Oh, there you go.
Lunar hedgehog?
Now we're talking.
Lunar hedgehog.
The lunar hedgehog.
Lunar hedgehog.
Well, that certainly works for me as a working name, and of course this can be revisited. So yeah, everybody who's listening and watching, a couple of these things may change as people maybe reconsider things for their character. We'll go back over the most important stuff when we get into our session 1, but otherwise I think we've covered a lot of good stuff here. And in between, I'm going to confer with the players a little bit, and then we can open session 1, probably with the characters deciding, okay, what do we do now? This big thing has happened. Noirana and her kind of cohort have secured the service of Fireball and the Lunar Hedgehog, and now they're going to go have some adventures. So I'm going to invite all the players to quickly remind everybody listening who you all are and where folks can find you in your projects. and then I will throw it back to Greg to do outro for the stream. So DongWon, do you want to tell folks about you and where they can find you?
Sure. Again, I'm DongWon Song. You can find me on Twitter. I'm just at DongWon, DONGWON. You can also find my newsletter, Publishing is Hard, at Substack. So it's publishingishard.substack.com.
Cool. Marie.
I'm Marie Bilodeau. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter. I'm just Marie Bilodeau everywhere. Glitterbomb Bilodeau on Instagram. And if you go to my website, which is perhaps predictably mariebilodeau.com, I currently am giving away a couple of books for free. I think up to 3 still, as a pandemic party. So you have Destiny's Blood, my space opera, and Hellborn and Hellbent, the new and latest books in my urban fantasy series. So go ahead and have some fun.
Cool. Joyce.
I'm Joyce, and you can find me on Twitter at Jolantru. J is just a Romulan greeting, and I've just released 2 books, self-pub, one middle grade and one young adult fiction, Dragon Physician and Sun Dragon's Song. Yeah.
Cool. And Greg.
Very cool. And we will add, as Echo brought up in the chat, we will add the, we'll call it, Scum Crew and Scum Cares. We will add that into the list so that we'll have those links in chat. Folks already will know me on here, but my name is Greg Wilson. Name on Twitch is Alderaan, and focus on story and narrative in games on this channel and run a bunch of tabletop campaigns. And I'm very happy that we're doing this one also. And biggest thing I think is my Icarus and Jelinek graphic novels, which will be early June, which I'm very excited about, and the library, Tales and Tomes of the Forbidden Library, my D&D 5e adventure source book done by Alligator Alley. The printer is finally out of lockdown again in Lithuania, and that means that we'll be getting the print versions of what is available on DriveThruRPG, but it's a copper seller. It was top 80 on Dungeons & Dragons on all of DriveThruRPG for a while, so everyone should go over and check it out. It's got lots of people, including Carlos Hernandez and Cat Rambo and other people that contributed to that too, and Ed Greenwood and others, so please check that out. But this was great, everybody, and Mike, we should also let you just quickly describe yourself for those who don't already know you. And thank you for running a really good Session Zero, Mike, that made things clear. So thank you for doing that also.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm Mike Underwood. I write as Michael R. Underwood. I've got about a dozen books out, from geeky urban fantasy to dimension genre hopping adventure. My next book is Annihilation Aria, which is a found family space opera. So if you like what we're doing here, you'll probably like that book. That was on purpose. It just got a starred review from Booklist, which is my first starred review, so I'm really hyped about that.
Yay.
The book is coming out on July 21st from Parvis Press, and in paperback and ebook, and in audio from Dreamscape Media. You can find me at michaelrunderwood.com or on Twitter at MikeRUnderwood.
And you can also find both Mike and myself on our podcast, SpeculateSF.com. I want to mention to everybody that the patreon.com/speculate, is really what makes it possible for us to do some of this and to pay our amazing audio editor, Rudy Basso, and stuff like that. Plus, also gives you some behind-the-scenes stuff that we're going to be showing. For example, one of the things that I think it's fair for us to talk about is that in our Blades of the Dark Speculate Twitch stream that we're running separately, one of the players keeps the most unbelievable campaign notes I've ever seen. Like, no joke. I like handwritten journal. It's amazing. And so she's agreed to allow us to show some of those notes that relate specifically to Blades in the Dark, this particular campaign on the Patreon to Patreon supporters. So you get cool stuff like that if you're able to support us over there. Otherwise, please give us feedback. This show is going to be running on this channel about once a month, which will mean that we'll end up having about 2 to 3 audio podcasts coming out of it each time. So this will be probably the second or third of these sets that you'll be seeing hearing, I should say, from us on Speculate. But keep following us over there. Please give us feedback there and back here on Twitch. And I want to thank the amazing crew. First of all, thanks to my good friend Mike for the amazing GM work. I am excited for this campaign. Also excited to be playing with Marie, with DongWon, and with Joyce, who I have either played with or been connected with in some capacity now before previously on this channel or elsewhere. But thank you, everybody. This is a lot of fun, and I'm excited. In chat, can we get some serious love for all the players today as well? And with that, I will say goodbye to all of them and goodbye to the Speculate listeners as well. And I'll see you folks all soon. Mike, Marie, DongWon, Joyce, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. That was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.